Assalamu alaikum, Brother Sayed, Brother Omar. Good morning.
Walaikum assalam.
You received the link, right?
Yeah. It was from Zoom, yes. Okay.
Yes, perfect.
It was not in calendar, but it was in received by email.
Oh, perfect. Brother Sayed, who will attend from the board other than Brother Suhaib will attend?
Yes, sister. Yeah,
Okay.
I will give a quick introduction, and then I will ask Mr. Ismail Gural, the Acting Secretary General of TKBB, to say a few words, and then Brother Omar, and we will give a small memento to Mr. Ismail, and then kick off.
Thank you so much. Inshallah khair.
Yes, inshallah. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah.
How do you?
Yes. Our board members are not going to join, as I said before. Maybe one, because it is not there. As I said, the public hearing is our, want to interact with public. So they have very minimal role to play. So we've asked them to, go around Istanbul before they leave. So we will conduct the public hearing, inshallah. And whoever the invites comes, we will answer the questions to them and also from the global audience, inshallah. able to hear me? Dr. Zahra?
Switch on the.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
You're audible, brother.
Salam.
Should we start now?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good morning and a warm welcome to all of you from AAOIFI, and welcome to the public hearing on syndicated financing governance standard. On this lovely evening, lovely morning at TKBB, Participation Association of Turkey. We are grateful to Turkey Participation Association Bank of Turkey for having arranged this public hearing for AAOIFI to give the briefing on syndicated financing. Public hearings are an important step in the development of AAOIFI standards. This provides an opportunity for AAOIFI to gather comments and hear from the industry stakeholders. I would like to welcome Mr. Ismail Mural, the Acting Secretary General of TKBB, to say a few words.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear Secretary General Omar Mustafa Ansari, distinguished guests and delegates joining us online today. Welcome to AAOIFI public hearing related to exposure draft of the governance standards syndicated financing hosted by the Participation Bank Association of Turkey. I hope outputs of this public hearing significantly contribute to the development of the Islamic finance sector, including both our participation banks and international stakeholders. I would like to give you a brief about of the participation banking sector in Turkey. Dear participants, today banking services in accordance with the principles of participation finance continue to spread in different countries and geographies. In Turkey, since the 1980s, and understanding of interest-free banking began to develop. Parallel to the development of the Turkish economy, we have made serious progress in the last 40 years. Along with this development, participation banking also succeeded in making a significant contribution to the Turkish economy. As TKBB, we updated our strategy plan in 2021 to enable participation finance sector to achieve its desired performance both in our country and in the wider region. Under the new roadmap for 2025, we outlined 6 main strategic goals: communication, ecosystem, product diversity, standard and governance, digital and competence building. Working in line with these strategies, through the work we will perform in the areas of those specific pillars. It will be much easier for us to reach our targets of 15% market share by 2025. Aiming to grow and increase product diversity in the fields of sustainability and participation finance, the capital markets in Turkey entered a new area with the start of the calculation of the 5 participations indexes based on the Sharia certificate issuance and trade standards, prepared by the Central Advisory Board with the active cooperation of the TKBB and Borsa Istanbul. Our participation banks increased their share in the financial ecosystem day by day by maintaining their strong growth potential as in previous years. Our market share in the general banking sector in the country has reached 8.3%. As our today, TKBB represents the participation banking sector in Turkey with 6 participation banks. Moreover, we are very excited to inform you that 3 digital participation banks have also taken approval from the authority and the establishment process. We strongly believe that with the significant contribution of upcoming member institutions, participation finance sector will experience extensive financial inclusion with both enhancing customer portfolio and product range. Dear guests, as a leading institution that aims to standardize and harmonize international Islamic finance practices and financial reporting according to Islamic finance principles, I would like to express that we are pleased to welcome you here today while extending sincere salams to all of us a very productive program. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ismail Bey. It's a big pleasure. And I'd like to express my thanks. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Omar Mustafa Ansari, Secretary General of AAOIFI, to say a few words, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Being here in Istanbul, one of the most important cities of Muslim Ummah, and being the headquarter of so much of the real economic sector, I talk about this thing every time, that Islamic finance has the closest link with the real sector. It is not about just the paper transactions. It's about the real sector. So I truly believe that Islamic finance or the participation finance belongs to the places where the real sector is. And we believe that the way participation banking is growing in Turkey and the way, inshallah, it has come up till now, it has all the potential to lead the market. So it's a great pleasure to be here with you guys. And I can see, mashallah, so many people joining us online as well. So welcome to all of you as well. From AAOIFI's perspective, I would like to say that I told this thing many times, that our earlier governance board chairman, Dr. Ishrat Hussain, who is very well known economist, central bank governor as well earlier, he used to say one thing, that standard setting is not a process that you can do in a boardroom. Means that it is something that needs to be implemented, and for that purpose you need to go out and interact with the stakeholders to get their input at all stages of the standard development to make sure that the standards are meeting the industry needs and are there for the purpose of establishing a sound and resilient system of Islamic finance or participation finance. From our perspective, holding these public hearings in different parts of the world is very important. Now things have become easier by holding, like, the Zoom online meetings, and which have their own advantage, because a lot of people, for one standard, you cannot hold public hearings in maybe 20 or 30 countries. But the people who join in the webinars are from 30 to 40 countries. But what is important is to interact with the local markets as well. It's not just a screen behind which you sit and other people sit behind the screen. Whenever you want to take the things to the next level, you need to be there physically. You need to interact with people. You need to interact with the important institutions. We are so much thankful to TKBB for hosting this meeting. Before this, our AAOIFI Governance and Ethics Board meeting, and helping us to arrange meetings and facilitating all the meetings with the BRSA, the central bank, Presidency Office Islamic Finance Department. So these are the things that I believe need to be done by AOIFI on a regular basis with all stakeholders around the globe. But as I mentioned, Turkey is one of the most important and must always be an important destination for AOIFI. With that, I would like to thank you again for being here and Dr. Ismail particularly for agreeing to our proposal of having a visit here and facilitating all the things, and to all of you for joining. And I think with this initial preliminary remarks, we need to go ahead with the standard. Brother Sayyid, is there anything in between?
Yes, thanks very much, Brother Omar. Now I'd like to present a very small token of appreciation from AAOIFI to Tikebebe, and Brother Omar Mustafa Ansari will give it to Brother Ismail.
This is to remind you of the relationship between AOIFI and Tikebebe. Thank you.
In the standard, the new standard book.
This is the Arabic standards published. The Turkish ones are there, but they need to be updated for this because this now contains 61 standards. So we hope, inshallah, their book will also be updated soon.
Thank you very much, Ismail Bey. Thank you very much, Brother Omar. And this brings us to the end of the opening ceremony. Now, let me invite Brother Omar to present the exposure draft of the governance standards of syndicated financing. Brother Omar, over to you.
Thank you very much, Brother Sayyid. Again, let me first share the screen and then give a brief overview about the standard first. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome again. This standard that we are going to discuss today is about syndicated financing for Islamic finance and participation finance. Why we are developing this standard, a little bit of background that we need to understand. We all understand that when you go to the corporate transactions, the large big ticket transaction that we generally say big ticket transactions with governments, with the large government institutions, infrastructure financing, and for major corporate financing, particularly for the newer projects, a single bank either cannot take the whole exposure alone because of third-party limits, because of capital adequacy related issues, because of single risk becoming too big for them to take, as well as because at times the banks together want to hedge the risk together. And again, because of the size of the transactions, at times it is not possible unless multiple banks come together. Whenever the Islamic financial institutions, including investment banks and the commercial banks, they come together to work for a single transaction. Transaction can be any. It can be ijara, it can be a diminishing musharaka, it can be a murabha transaction. The nature of transaction will be dependent on the need of the customer and the type of the project which needs to be financed. So this can take form of different transactions. You need to come up with a single set of documents. They all need to come up with a single set of principles that need to be on that transaction. It is quite possible that at times the views of the Sharia think they need to find a middle ground. They need to find a solution that best serves the customer and safeguards the interest of each of the participants in the connected for a second. Can you all see my screen? Sister Zara, can you kindly confirm?
Yes, brother West, we can see.
You can hear me? Okay, now the screen is back.
Yes.
I hope you can see the screen also now.
We can see and hear, Brother Omar.
So, thank you. Now, what we want to talk about here is the relationship that needs to be established for the purpose of creating a syndication finance needs justice, equity, fairness, and transparency amongst the banks who are part of syndication, as well as with the customer that is going to be the part. Based on experiences in different markets, it has been identified that at times syndication financing has some aspects which have a transparency. At times, we have noted that there were fairness issues. At times, the interest of the customer was not safeguarded properly. At times, the interest of banks other than the lead banks were not properly safeguarded. These were the real life examples which we actually identified are happening in the different markets. One of our friends who has been into investment banking and syndication finance, 2 years back, roughly 1.5 years back, we requested him to do a training course on syndication finance. AAOIFI already has the Sharia standard on the syndication finance, addressing particularly the Sharia issues with regard to syndication or consortium finance. This brother started working with us on the presentation for that. But then we had a discussion and he suggested to be considered based on his practical experience. He suggested that AAOIFI should consider having a standard on that. We made a proposal to the Governance and Ethics Board, and it was done on a priority basis. The standard has the aim that, number one, all syndication finances should be streamlined in a systematic manner. It should have a proper set of process flow that is followed, so that ambiguity is not there with regard to the process flow. Secondly, the role, responsibilities, as well as the accountability part with regard to different organs of the structure should be identified. There are certain issues where you need to find the middle ground with regard to the process that needs to be applied, as well as how the transaction is to be finalized. And for those things, you need to have a streamlined process. And that is the aim of this standard. And this is what we try to do. This standard is to be read with our Sharia standard of syndicated financing. Means that both of the standards, this on the governance side and that one on the Sharia side, complement each other and make sure that the overall requirements that should be there to have a streamlined process of syndicated financing is there. So this was the general overview. With general overview, I will skip the initial preface section and introduction section because I have summarized these things already. But if anybody here or anybody online has a comment on the preface and introduction part, please feel free to ask. But just one thing to the online participants, the request is that if they can kindly make sure that the questions are not put in the chat window, rather they are put in the question and answer window, answer all the questions if the time permits. I have already few comments here. I think one or two are about people are saying salam. Walaikum assalam, brother Sheikh Bilal and brother Ahmad Tahir. Brother Ahmed Tahir has a question. In the case of hybrid syndicated financing transaction, is a common terms agreement for Islamic finance and conventional tranche acceptable, or there must be a segregated terms agreement for the Islamic finance tranche? Brother Ahmed, it's a very good question, but on a lighter note, I would like to say it's a long public hearing session. You want to have all the answers right now and go home. Means that please allow me to take you through the standard and the requirements. The answer of your questions will be there, inshallah. I'm not, I'm keeping this question live, open, and inshallah, when we reach at the right place, I will answer, because for a lot of other people, it might be, that what they say, jumping the guns. So it is better if I answer later. And you are always welcome, brother. You said thanks, so you are always welcome. Your question will be answered soon, because we have defined these things in detail. So jumping directly to that might not be the best idea. Okay, so if we have any comments on the initial comments or question with regard to the initial introduction that I provided from here, from the room or from the online. Okay. Now coming to the objective of the standard. The objective of this standard is to set out a framework for governance of syndicated financing transactions over the entire life cycle of such transactions. Now there will be some points that I'll try to clarify at different stages. So why we are insisting on the life cycle? Because we believe that syndicated financing is not about just having a transaction at one time and then everybody go home. Actually, the situation that comes is that there are so many issues that continue during the whole transaction life cycle to the transaction completion. Let me give you an example, a very quick example. If there is a lead bank who joined the syndication, asked others to come, took his fees, and then took an exit and early redemption from the customer. Others are continuing during the life cycle. These sort of things actually at times have happened in market. The question is it fair? Because the lead bank took the fee part. Now, this is very important aspect that we have considered. The problem is that in the syndicated financing, normally there are two elements of revenue. The first element of revenue is for sure the profit element, the rental element, the any type of return element that is on the transaction. But the second part is on the transaction fee. The transaction fee element is at times big enough, particularly for the first year. So now there are multiple issues on that. The lead bank or multiple lead banks, their investment banking or corporate team that is leading the project is expecting a bonus on that. That bonus can create, jeopardize independence. So for example, if I want to make a transaction success because my bonus is dependent on that, I may not be fair and transparent in everything related to that with the other banks, because my success is if I get all the banks on board and I get my fee. And it applies to the individual and it applies to the bank, because bank at the bank level, the lead bank at the bank level takes the transaction fee as well. So the problem is that when you have two types of revenue coming in from the same transaction, the risk of transparency and fairness comes. And we want to make sure that during the whole life cycle, this transparency and framework and fairness should continue. So if I take the fee, get everybody on board, and then my part of the transaction, settled first, what is happening? Another example. I am a bank already working with the institution, and I have already, for example, financing of $5 million there. The bank needs maybe $15 million more. I create a syndicate. I say I will be putting $4 million more, or I make a syndication of $20 million, and I say I'll put $5 million, okay, and then I convinced others to come in. I took the fee for $20 million, and then I did not settle this one, but I settled my other financing arrangement, which was already there for $5 million. So only for a few months, maybe I kept $10 million, but then I took out my $5 million again. Another example, during mid-stage, like, if the syndication transaction was for 5 years, during mid-stage, one of the bank becomes aware that the customer is not A quality anymore. Again, it's not going immediately into default, but they start considering. So they started exiting from the customer, reducing their financing from that. Can they do it particularly for the syndicated part? Would it be fair? Again, I'm not answering all these questions. I'm just identifying the situations that actually happen. And when we talk about participation finance or Islamic finance, we need to understand that it's not only about following what is written in Sharia rules and principles. It's also about being fair. It's also about being just and equitable. It's also about being transparent to each other. Because probably, to be honest, in Islam, the first requirement is to be honest, and the second requirement would be with regard to these transactions. So I'm just putting some of these examples. So that's why we have talked about the entire life cycle. So we are not saying that only by the time you just execute the transaction, you do the syndication and then you run away. We are saying that if you are into a syndicate, then it means that the whole life cycle has to be covered properly. Implementation of such framework in turn is expected to result in enhanced stakeholders' confidence in AAOIFIs and Islamic financial markets, particularly with regard to the compliance with Sharia principles and rules, ensuring transparency and fair and equitable treatment of stakeholders. This standard complements and shall be read in conjunction with AAOIFI Sharia Standard 24 syndicated financing. Let me cover the scope also, then I will take comments on objective and scope together. So the standard set out the golden framework for overall life cycle of syndicated financing transactions comprising deal origination, award of mandate, marketing and placement, financial close till deal termination, whether early or as per the original maturity phases. The responsibility to implement this standard rests with those charged with governance and the management of the lead arranger, syndicate participants and its AAOIFI's customers in their respective capacities. The guidance provided in this standard, particularly in respect of pre-mandate phase, also known as deal origination phase, and financial close phase, shall also be applicable mutatis mutandis on listed and unlisted sukuk issuances, insofar as the same is not in conflict with government. Standard discusses the execution and going forward phase. Now, do we have any comments on the discussion that we had till now in the room or from the participants online? Okay, so let me move ahead. I just lost connection for a second. I think I need to share the screen again.
Yes, brother.
Yes,
We can see now.
I just lost it for a second.
Sure.
Okay, can you hear me now clearly?
Yes.
Okay. Now we have some questions in the question and answer tab. Let me address them. Brother Ahmed Al-Tahir, your question I will address late. Anonymous attendee, but the fee element, which is usually paid once the syndicated financing is successfully made available to the borrower, is remunerated the hard work of the arranger to form the syndicate. If such arranger leaves, sells down later, it has not much to do with fairness. It is an anonymous attendee. I don't know if it's a brother or sister. So I say that assuming brother on a majority basis. But maybe not. Yeah, still in this room also. So the question is, that whether it is for the service fee or a service part only. The question is if the project that you wanted is a success, and for that purpose you paid the fee. Now, for your purpose as a customer, maybe the fee is justified, irrespective of whatever is done. But if I do it intentionally for the purpose of bringing others to the syndicate and taking the fee and getting out, it is not fair with the syndication participants. So now it is about the intention part. And at times we humans don't know the intention. Allah knows the intention. So the question is, if you did it for purpose, then my issue is not exiting. My issue is, if you did it for purpose, then you actually convinced others to come to this transaction, showing that I am also taking a risk of 5% or 10% or 15%, and then you did not fulfill that sort of demonstration of that fact that, okay, I am also having 15%. So the issue is that fee is justified, but this sort of behavior might not be justified. It might not be fair with other participants. Secondly, we are not saying anything against taking the fee. We are saying about being transparent. So if I have other financing arrangements, deposit arrangements with the customer, so at time I may need to disclose them to other participating banks in the syndication to be fair. The requirements that we are putting in are not that you can't take the fee or you don't or you have to refund the fee. We are not saying that. Yes, if it is a justifiable fee that has been received on a fair basis, then nobody is asking to change the business transaction and nobody is asking to reverse it. The problem is, are you being fair with your participants whom you convinced to come here and you took the fee to bring them on board? If you become, let me give another example. I used to be a consultant myself before joining AAOIFI. I was with EY. I used to do audits, but I was consultant for Islamic finance as well. We used to do some transactions like this, but being a professional firm, we were not putting our money. We were just doing the service. Now, from my perspective, I was not convincing anybody by saying, okay, I'm also putting my 5% and 10%, so please come with me. I was just going to convince them purely on merit that this project justifies that you come in here, it's a good opportunity. So yes, my success was that I convinced them. For that purpose, I had to do a very good feasibility study. I had to do a very good operational and strategic planning. And based on that, I would put in front of the banks that you need to come, because my work was purely professional. Unfortunately, my work was unsuccessful against some investment banks. Those investment banks did not do a preliminary study and the feasibility and the operational plan and the strategic plan in depth and in quality like me. They did it something very basic. But they convinced the banks, we are putting our 5% also, or we are putting 10% also, you come with it. So I'm just giving you this example that actually at times, the most important factor on which a syndication participant depends is, okay, the lead bank is doing all the due diligence, the lead bank is doing everything, and it is putting its 10%. So why I need to do all of it myself? So yes, I'm not saying that fee is not justified. Fee is justified for this against this extra effort. But if you are doing a pure professional work, then don't say to others, I'm putting my 10%. Just go as a professional. I will see how much successful you are. My experience, your success rate will be much less, because it's it's a saying what they say that put your money where your mouth is. So actually you need to show money that I am also doing this thing. That gives them much more confidence as compared to a professional firm bringing them a good investment proposal. So without any disrespect to the hard work, I believe transparency and fairness is important. We are not asking the fee to be returned. We are just asking that it has to be a fair and transparent process. Even if they want to have an exit, there should be an exit clause, and the exit clause, etc., have to be in line with the agreement of the participation or syndication agreement. Brother Amir Mohammed has a comment and Brother Amir has worked with us on this project. Leaving consortium is not an issue at all, and if someone wants to leave, there is a mechanism on transparency basis as part of the standard. Exactly, you have said the same thing. Leaving, we are not saying that you can't leave. We are saying that it has to be according to the pre-agreed mechanism, and it has to be on a transparent basis. Thank you very much, Brother Amir. Brother Amir Mohammed is the one who actually worked with us on this project, because you cannot be expert in all the things. So for all projects, AAOIFI actually appoints some researchers and consultants to help us with regard to the basic research and understanding of the subject matter. Thank you, Brother Amir. Brother Muhammad Abdul Razak has a comment. Sukuk is very different from syndication. I would suggest to remove it. Let me try to say, Brother Muhammad Abdul Razak, that what we want to say. What we are saying is that the deal origination phase, the initial phase, is before the sukuk is actually issued. We realize that when we were working on this standard, and we felt that some of the things are similar, so we took some guidance from the Sukuk standard, and at that point of time we realized that the deal origination phase is not covered in Sukuk standard, because Sukuk standard is taking the stage of Sukuk issuance till Sukuk culmination. That is not taking the stage of deal origination. Means that there is a bank or an investment bank that is assigned with the responsibility as an advisor or as a lead arranger for doing the sukuk. So to that extent, sukuk has similarity, and our sukuk standard does not cover it. But Brother Abdul Razak will take your comment to the working group and to the board. Let me clarify one thing which I clarify every time. Some of the questions I will answer. I will answer you based on my personal understanding as well as the discussions that have taken place in the board or in the working group. But it does not mean that we are not going to take your comment forward. All the comments that we receive today in the public hearing, and those we receive in writing, will be taken to the working group and to the board for consideration. Brother Muhammad Abdul Razak has another comment. What if the customer, after sovereigns, corporates, or Islamic financial institution, does not wish to disclose arrangement book runner fee distributed across the syndicate banks? The question of fairness is here. If they do not want to disclose, first, I think this might not be transparent. But if it is agreed by all the parties, then it can be done, I believe. We need to take a note of your comment, and we'll take it to the working group as to whether we need to consider this aspect about if they don't want to do it. If the customer doesn't want to do it, then what to do. To be honest, for me, it is against transparency, but we will see how we can handle your comments, sir. Brother Ahmed Al-Tahir has another comment. In the case of hybrid syndicated financing transaction, is a common terms agreement for Islamic tranche and conventional tranche acceptable? Sorry, this is the same one that we had. I need to answer it later because we actually have covered this thing very clearly. Okay, the anonymous attendee has an argument, but the participants in the syndication are not convinced by the arranger, but rather invited so that they study and examine themselves. Okay, if they do it all themselves, then why the arranger take the fee? If they do all of it by themselves, then why the arranger take the fee? Arranger take the fee to make the transaction a success. And for that, it has to do whole part. But okay, we take a note of your comments, sir, and we'll take it forward to the working group. There is a comment from Brother Mustaq Ahmed. How participant banks will be able to ensure continuous Sharia compliance of the transaction, as normally they do not have the access permissibly to conduct Sharia compliance or Sharia audit of the facility. In case the syndicate facility is provided to the organization, which also has the same Sharia scholars on the board or majority of the members of the Sharia board or the syndicate finance facility provider, how the conflicts of interest issue shall be addressed and how they would be able to supervise their own work in terms of Sharia audit and compliance. These are good comments. That the conflict of interest part, I believe, is very unique situation, but at times it might be possible. We are not asking a separate Sharia board. This is one of the important points that actually we discussed in the working group level. The initial discussion was that there should be a separate working group. I think there should be a separate Sharia board. I think the Sharia standard also talks about the same thing. It's Sister Zahra, Sister Alia.
Yes, brother.
Take a note of this point because somebody has talked to me before this public hearing last week that we need to consider this issue again of the having a single Sharia board. But the working group and the board decided that making it a requirement of having a single Sharia board will be an overburden. So it is not possible. But we need to map this requirement with the syndicate financing Sharia standard. There is something there which they believe that requires a single board. So we need to check this point. I would request the participants today if they can also provide a comment if they feel that it is good to have a single Sharia board for the syndicated financing instead of individual ones. Why we kept the decision of keeping individual Sharia boards rather than having a single Sharia board. Although it is a duplication of work that each one of the Sharia boards has to review and approve the transaction, but the point was that according to some of the working group members, and then the board agreed to this point, that according to some Sharia board some working group members, in most parts of the world where Islamic finance Sharia governance framework is there, the respective Sharia board cannot be dissolved from responsibility of reviewing each transaction where necessary. They cannot just rely on a single Sharia board. So their responsibility remains intact. So if their responsibility remains intact, so what we did that we said that lead bank's Sharia board has to do the detailed work and others can use that work. But we did not say that there will be a single board that will be applicable on all the institutions. So if we can have comments from the audience today on this point as well, you can provide your comments today, you can send in writing as well, that what you feel is the more appropriate form. Do we decide that there will be one single board that will be doing this function? And if we do that, would it be contradiction with the requirements of the respective Sharia boards of the respective banks in line with the relevant regulatory and Sharia governance requirements? There is a comment from Saifuddin Hamdi, Assalamu alaikum, in reference to the selling down discussion after deal closure. Something to note is that sells down activity is usually managed by another team who has different objectives targets than the investment banking team who originated and closed the deal. Thank you very much, Brother Saifuddin. It's a good point. We'll take it into consideration. Only thing is that we are less concerned here about the team and more concerned about bank-to-bank relationship. Because from bank-to-bank relationship perspective, even if the team is different, the bank is getting out. So our point is, again, we are not saying you can't go out. We are saying you can go out only according to the exit terms which are agreed and in a transparent manner. But it's a good point, sir. We'll take a note of it and we'll take it to the working group for consideration. Anonymous attendee again has a comment. May I request you to kindly put your name, please, so that we can, because even I don't know whether it's the same. I can see from the sequence of the question that it's the same person, but I would appreciate if you can kindly mention your name. All syndication abiding by well-established industry rules have a clear and robust rules around exiting. Honestly, not too clear where the starting point of assuming the arranger is acting in an unfair manner is based on given the prudential rules and established best practices. This is based on real examples that we have noted in the market, or when we talked about and discussed about this thing, there were people who talked about this thing. So I can just say that there are rules and there are regulations and there are standards, but there are still people who do not comply with that. I cannot say that by having this standard, everything will be everything will be resolved and no problem will be there, because it's a human nature. With regard to when you said that there are good prudential regulations and established best practices, in those countries where can I have some examples of syndication financing related prudential rules? It will be very much helpful to me, because we are not aware of prudential regulations related to syndication financing addressing these fairness issues. So to be honest, if you can kindly provide us one or two examples of those regulations which are in place, it will be very much helpful to us. Let me tell you clearly, the purpose of this standard is to set up those rules. And we believe that those rules are not available in a lot of markets where Islamic finance is operating.
There is one more question in the chat.
Please, anybody who has put the question in the chat window, kindly put it in the question answer box, please. There are two reasons to that. Number one, I can address them easily. Number two, we keep a record of all questions in the question answer box and we take it to the working group. So this is for record purposes also. So kindly, you are requested to put in the question answer box. Brother Amir has made a comment. We suggested a mechanism that each participant bank Sharia board will review. Yes, the lead bank has to do the main work, but every participant bank has to review. Okay, so I move to the definitions. I'll consider the significant definitions quickly. So first is arranger, also referred to as manager in certain jurisdiction, is one or more IFI, CFI. CFI means conventional financial institution. Sister Zahra, can you please have we used conventional financial institution before this place? Otherwise, we need to define IFI and CFI. Okay, because it's
Noted.
yeah. Individually or collectively mandated by the customer of a syndicated financing transaction to arrange finance by way of forming a syndicate of eligible IFIs and or CFIs. An arranger, unless specifically mentioned otherwise, includes a lead arranger. Customer in the specific context of this standard is the person availing a financing facility under Sharia compliant mode of financing by way of a syndicated financing transaction. Sister, please make a note of it. We have used the term person here, but we should say person or entity. Fatwa, reference to a Sharia opinion presented to a person. Again, fatwa definition is coming out from a Sharia standard, so I do not want to repeat it. Hybrid syndicated financing transaction. Now, this is very important to understand. This is the second main reason of having this standard. The first reason is transparency and fairness, but the second main reason of presenting this standard is that at times the syndication takes place where the conventional and Islamic both parts are there. So we are talking about the hybrid syndicated financing in this standard where Islamic tranche is there and the conventional tranche is there. In the specific context of the standard is a syndicated financing transaction which includes a Sharia compliant tranche as well as a conventional financing tranche. Information memorandum, also referred to as placement memorandum or any other name, is a disclosure document that describes and presents for the potential syndication participants a financing proposal along with prospective customers' organizational, operational, and financial information to facilitate evaluation of such proposal for the purpose of participation as a syndication participant. So this is equivalent to a prospectus in case of sukuk and other transactions. So inter-financer agreement. Now this is very important, most important document that we are talking about. Also at times referred to as syndication agreement and or syndication terms of reference, is an agreement among the financiers, syndication participants, including IFIs and or CFIs or classes of syndication participants, describing inter alia their respective rights and obligations with respect to syndicated financing transaction, the customer and the underlying assets or business and the respective securities. The details as to how the transaction shall be executed, how the payments from the customers are to be received and to be apportioned among the syndication participants. Sister Zahra, kindly make a note. Shall be executed. A comma is missing. No, it is missing from the original body text. Or it
Yes,
is
we have to correct it.
Here. Okay.
No problem.
One thing, we have used the term inter-financer agreement instead of inter-creditor agreement. Conventionally, the term inter-creditor agreement is more used, or inter-creditor terms of reference is more used. We have used the term inter-financer agreement. IFI is defined here. Lead arranger. Lead arranger, also referred to as lead mandated arranger or lead manager, is an IFI CFI mandated by a customer or a syndicated financing transaction from among the mandated arrangers to lead the process of arranging a syndicated financing transaction. At times, the responsibility of a lead arranger may be shared by more than one co-lead arranger as per the defined terms of reference in the mandate. Mandate, by whatever name called, is usually the first document to be agreed on a syndicated financing transaction which initiates the syndication process, sets out the proposed terms of the syndicated financing, and authorizes the arrangers to arrange the syndicated financing transaction. We have asked about a provisional fatwa here. The provisional fatwa is to be given by the lead arranger's Sharia board. So what we are saying that when you initiate the transaction, the lead arranger Sharia board has to do the initial work, and they have to give a fatwa approving the initial structure of the transaction and its details without approving the final document, because final documents will be finalized at the last stage. What is the benefit of this provisional fatwa? That it is actually going to help and convince the financial institution that the transaction is a Sharia compliant transaction and they can move ahead with the transaction. Only at the final stage, their Sharia boards will approve the final product documentation. This way, actually, it facilitates. So we are not asking one single Sharia board. Rather, we are saying that there can be lead arranger Sharia board taking the lead in the beginning, and then towards the end, you can have all the Sharia boards approving their respective tranche or the portion of the financing. This way it facilitates, because in the initial phase you are not required to go to each of the Sharia board and get their approval. Only you can just get the structure approved. Based on that approval, you get this initial fatwa. This initial fatwa is attached to the information memorandum to support the initial facilitation process. So this is the way the process, we believe. It is actually a practice in some of the countries already. So we believe that this is the good practice to be followed as a standardized practice. Sharia principles and rules. AOIFI have a specific definition of Sharia principles and rules with a hierarchy. That when you define Sharia principles and rules, these are the Sharia standards of AOIFI, the regulations of the respective jurisdiction, and then the rulings of Central Sharia Board, requirements of financial accounting standards insofar as they entail Sharia-related requirements, and the approvals and rulings of the Sharia Board of the respective institution. So they apply in this given hierarchy. Sharia compliance is the adherence with Sharia principles and rules of the syndicated financing transactions, structure, relevant features, contracts, and various other arrangements, as well as the operations and activities related to the syndicated financing underlying assets during the entire life cycle of a syndicated financing transaction. Syndicated financing refers to a group of also the consortium financing is used in some countries. It refers to a group of AAOIFI jointly financing through any Sharia compliant mode of financing. When we use syndicated financing, we are talking about Sharia compliant. When we say hybrid syndicated financing, we are referring to a Sharia compliant plus conventional hybrid transaction. Syndicated financing underlying assets are tangible assets, usufructs and services, and or ownership of the assets of particular projects or special investment activities underlying a syndicated financing transaction. Security agent, also at times referred to as fiduciary or trustee, is an entity appointed by the syndication partners or the lead arranger on their behalf to serve as an agent to hold and or enforce rights on the syndicated financing underlying assets and or securities on behalf of the syndication participants and to safeguard their interest in accordance with the specific terms of reference. Syndication participants, we have the definition. Those charged with governance is the board of directors and other board committees. So I'm not going for these details. Now, if we have comments till this stage from the hall here. Okay. So we have comments on online. So let me take those points. Sheikh Hisham Masulfi has a point. Can we have a near future a case study example about the subject refers financial Sharia and governance issues in it? Sheikh Hisham, we take a note of your point and we'll see if we can what we can do. So we'll take your comment to the board, inshallah, and we'll see if more work is needed with regard to case study or something. We'll try to do that. With regard to the interfinancer agreement, I would like to clarify that we will not be developing. We have given the main context of interfinancer agreement, but we have not given a template for that, because actually AOIFI works with other Islamic finance infrastructure bodies, and we requested AAOIFI, International Islamic Financial Market, to be part of this project as well, and thanks to them, they became part of the working group and provided their input. It was discussed with them that they actually are intending to do a standardized template for interfinancer agreement. So if they come up with that, so it is because AOIFI's primary mandate is not documentation. So with regard to documentation, IFM has the primary mandate. So we mentioned what should be the minimum contents, because even if there are a lot of countries where IFM's documentation are not adopted, but still AOIFI standards are adopted. So that's why we decided to put the minimum contents. So we defined the contents here, but we did not produce a illustrative interfinancer agreement. With regard to case study and other things, we will take the matter to the board and we'll see what is possible for us, inshallah. There is a comment from Brother Muhammad Saifullah Azad. Thank you so much for arranging the program. List of acronyms. The government standard, governance standards, syndicated financing may contain list of acronyms such as ISBA, SSB, IM, NDA, etc. Thank you very much, Brother Muhammad Saifullah Azad. Actually, as AOIFI, we considered it once or twice, but since our earlier standards do not contain acronyms, we decided not to have acronyms in any of the standards. We define them actually within the definitions where necessary. So this, again, every standard setting body has their style. So we define them in the a definitions list. However, we are working on a very comprehensive project at this point of time, which includes a glossary of Islamic finance terms, as well as a taxonomy and codification of AAOIFI standards. Inshallah, as soon as it is completed, you will find that all will be available online, and it will be very, very, very easy to identify the relevant requirements, because right now the standards are contained. Again, they are available online, but they are not available in a searchable manner. They are not available in a manner where the glossary and the terms are identified and things are like cross-referred to each other. Similarly, the standards in the book are presented in the manner and in the sequence of when they were published, issued by the respective board, not in the logical sequence. So when you open the standard book, you might not find the things going in the logical sequence, because these are standards. But the new codified version of our standards, which will be available online soon, inshallah, will be having all of it. So acronyms and glossary will be part of that, inshallah, sir. Thank you very much. It's a very good comment. We don't disagree on the need. It's only about the style. And inshallah, once this taxonomy thing is done, inshallah, taxonomy and glossary is done, you will find all of them at one place, inshallah. Dr. Hisham, with respect to Mr. Omar, I do not expect him to read. We need to hear from him about the aspects, drivers, and factors behind the details of the standard. Thank you very much, Brother Muhammad Hisham. Actually, there are different type of participants when we hold the public hearings. So for some of them, I need to read out some of the important parts. Normally, I do not read out the parts other than most important ones are scope, objective, and definition, some of the definitions. For some of the important rules and requirements, I read out, because we have to handle all the participants at the same time. Some of them are not familiar with the subject already, so I have to do that. And like I started, so I provided whole background at one time, and I did not repeat the preface and introduction, did not read them out. So this is a public hearing of the standard, where we need to present the standard to the market and get their comments. So at times we need to keep a hybrid model here, but thank you very much. I'll try to be more in line with your comment, inshallah, going forward. Brother Saifuddin Hamdi has said that he suggests adding the definitions of the following: term sheet, investment agent, global investment agent, and invitation letter. Brother, thank you very much. I think some of the terms we have used in a different meaning, like investment agent we used in a different meaning, and the invitation letter we used in a different meaning. So maybe what we need to do is that we need to identify the synonym terms that we have used, and with regard to term sheet, I think we should define. I agree with you. The term sheet we should define. So we take a point from your. Thank you very much. It's a good comment. What we will do, that we will define what is needed, like term sheet, and we will identify the terms that we are actually using on a synonym as a synonym. So we'll identify that these are the synonyms of these terms, because whether in different markets different terms are used, like consortium financing versus syndicated financing, arranger versus manager versus investment agent. So there are so many different terms, the trustee or fiduciary or the security agent. So there are different terms that have been used in different markets. Our working group comprised of multiple markets, and now this is the good point that we are holding the public hearing here physically as well as online. So we are able to get more comments. So inshallah, we'll try to incorporate your comment. Thank you very much, brother. Brother Maruf Mubashir has a point. I just want to know on what contract participants bank is structured. Could it be Musharka? Brother Maruf, the quick answer is that syndicated financing agreement does not require it to be specific on a particular product. So you need to have a financier agreement, which is like mutual working agreement of the banks. And then the transaction structure can be based on musharaka, mudarba, wakala, ijara, any of the suitable product which suits the customer needs and suits the risk appetite of the banks. So from that perspective, our agreement between the participants is the interfinancial agreement, which is not specifically a type of Islamic finance product. Rather, it's more about an agreement to work together for that transaction. And with regard to the underlying structure, it can be any product. Why I am feeling that the room here is very silent and we are getting so many comments from there. Yes, sister, your good name?
I can have one. This is Zeynep from Kuwait Turk Investment Banking. Regarding these definitions, I would like to ask whether common terms agreements will be included in this, or will you be covering this in another session?
Interfinancier agreement, for the interfinance, you can call it terms of reference. So for interfinance agreement, we have identified the minimum key requirements. As I mentioned, we will be referring to AAOIFI because AAOIFI is more, their mandate is primarily standardization of documentation. So they already have a project. We hope that we come up with that project, they come up with that project quickly. But from our perspective, we have defined the minimum contents of interfinancer agreement. So, like, just to make sure that the transparent terms are agreed, so the minimum contents are there. I think that is, from our perspective, sufficient. But if you feel that a document needs to be attached, then we'll say like standard document or illustrative document need to be attached. So we'll see how we can discuss with them, inshallah.
Common terms agreement, actually, not interfinancier agreement, because in term sheet we will define initial terms, but these will not be very elaborate.
Okay.
After that, in interfinancier agreement, we only consider the things that the participants will decide within each other how to organize this management during the life cycle of the project. But we still need to define other details.
Okay. A common terms agreement. So you are talking about the situation where each of the bank is having a separate agreement directly with the customer. Am I right? Because common terms will be applicable when each of the bank is having a single as an individual agreement with the customer. Is it right or I'm mistaken?
Actually, there may be two scenarios. Each of the financier, each of the participants can prepare their specific finance agreement with the customer, as well as a common terms agreement regarding the management of the project with the client can be put into one agreement. Apart from the facility.
Now I got your point. So we did not have the common terms agreement in this process flow. Again, it's a good point. We'll take it seriously and we'll take it to the working group. The flow that we have defined does not include that option. First thing, we have said that has to be a single agreement. We have not gone for the multiple agreement. Secondly, we said that with regard to some of the things that you might be mentioning are required for us in the interfinancer agreement. And then we have to appoint a trustee of fiduciary to handle the things at the forefront as well. So there are 2-3 things that we have defined. We take your comment, it's a very good comment. Even if we need to allow that flexibility, we need to consider what needs to be done. Again, I'm not the decision maker. My responsibility is to take it to the working group and board and see how they see it. But thank you very much for the comment. So if we go for individual contracts, then a common terms agreement is a must. I fully agree. But if we go for a single agreement signed by all the banks, in that situation, there is no need for common terms agreement because a single agreement covers it all. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right.
So the question is, do we provide the flexibility in this standard that that either you go with a single agreement, so all the terms are there, so you don't need a separate common terms agreement. But if you can have every bank has their own agreement with the customer, and in that situation, they need to have a common terms agreement additionally to make sure that the things are on the same aligned with each other.
I think this will be a good discussion if we consider this topic together with whether the case will be hybrid financing or purely Islamic financing, because if we are thinking about a hybrid financing, it will be so hard to bring conventional and
No. We are clear on hybrid. We are clear that for hybrid, our approach in this is standard is for hybrid, the Islamic participants, the Sharia compliant participants of them will have to identify everything separate, and there will be a agreement between them as well. Because we are very clear, our Sharia standard is very clear that conventional branch and Islamic branch have to be completely different. So even we said that there has to be a lead arranger separately for this part or a co-arranger separately for this part. So there are multiple aspects. Let me take you through there. Okay. But I think it's a very good point, sister. We highly appreciate.
Thank you.
Alama, we have two people who have raised their hands to speak. If you could say, we will allow them to talk.
The point is, it depends on the time available. So,
Nigat Tanveer and Walid Sareddin.
Okay. The problem is if you allow for all of them, but I think Sister Nigat will be unhappy with me if I don't allow her. Okay. Sister Zahra.
Yes, I can allow.
Can you kindly allow Sister Nigat Tanveer and Brother Walid Sareddin one by one to talk?
Okay.
Please. Again, we cannot take all the questions on live. I'll try to address the questions, but again, let's quickly take two comments in by voice as well.
Ms. Tanveer, we should be able to hear you now. Yes?
Sister Nigat?
Oh, can you hear me better?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Whether I have a comment and as well as a question, so please answer right now or maybe during your, the presentation. One thing is that we have the Sharia standard, okay? Over there, they have mentioned clearly how the parties or the agreement between your relationship between the parties, just like it was explicitly mentioned that it would be mudaraba, musharaka, paid agency or non-paid agency. So the question comes to mind regarding this common term agreement or something like that, which have been earlier mentioned. This is one aspect. Second is that if someone is using the Sharia standard on syndicated finance, will that be not sufficient to fulfill all the requirement, or reason being, if this is the approach, then perhaps AAOIFI needs to go through the rest of the standard as well to think from the governance perspective. This is a general comment. And one thing is, I would like to know that there is something mentioned about exiting a partner. For example, in one transaction, there is one Sharia, the bank, another is conventional, and they are together providing the financing. And if somehow the Sharia party is trying to exit, so what sort of checks would be there, or rather, it should be explicitly mentioned that the Sharia party cannot exit, or there should be someone else to take care of that matter. So thank you again, giving the opportunity, and congratulations to AAOIFI for all the hard work. Thank you, brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, sister. Let me quickly try to answer one or two aspects. The first aspect I think is important for all the participants, so let me clarify. There are some areas where we can see that AAOIFI has a Sharia standard, but AAOIFI still went for developing a governance standard. Accounting standard is clear. We have Sharia standard, and then we have accounting standards. They are because they have a different objective. But what is the need for having a governance standard or a governance requirement where we already have a Sharia requirement? this requirement comes from two angles. The first angle is that governance standards define processes and controls in a manner that you ensure best practices. So at times what happens that the Sharia standard has a requirement or as a Sharia principle or as a Sharia rule. How that rule needs to be applied in real life needs further elaboration, further guidance, further sort of explanations. For those areas, we might need governance standards and governance related requirements. So this actually happens in some of the areas like this. There is a other way around situation as well. There are a few situations where you can find that the Sharia standard says this thing is allowed. But at times, what happens that the thing might be allowed individually, it might be allowed on a need basis, it might be allowed on a individual transaction basis, but that thing, if applied on a collective basis, on an ongoing basis, on a large scale basis, might be against certain other aspects. For example, in some of the situations, it may be against transparency. In some of the situations, it may be leading to dishonest sort of practices in the market. In some cases, this thing might be leading to a reputational risk for Islamic finance. So the governance standards are actually more close to the regulatory requirements, and actually they are adopted by the regulators to have good governance practices. So at times it is even quite possible that the governance requirements may be brought in to control some of the I would say loopholes that are created by market players because of not very clear wording or because of some flexibility in the Sharia standard. So for example, I'm just giving you an example that syndicated financing standard on the Sharia side has mentioned some Sharia related basic requirements. But it has not gone into those aspects where the risk of dishonesty, unfair treatment, unjustifiable treatment is there. So what we did, we tried to build upon that standard. We will recheck, Sister Nikhil, based on your comment, we'll recheck if there is any overlapping where we have done overlapping in a way that there is a conflict. We believe that our standard has no conflict. The governance standard has no conflict with the standard. We'll recheck based on your comment. However, we need to build upon at times on that, and that building upon needs some sort of explanation to some of the matters. You need to go in detail for some of the matters, and you need to stop some of the practices. You need to put hurdles on some of the practices because they may have a bad impact from the other end. So considering these things, I think we need to understand the objectives of a Sharia standard versus the objectives of a governance standard, and how the governance standard works alongside the Sharia standard. With regard to your comments are more like suggestion. So I think we will be taking them to the working group with regard to this mapping part we will do. And the second aspect that I wanted to cover from your question was with regard to.
My question was on two aspects. One is that inshallah AAOIFI will for other standards as well the same sort of thing, that governance principles for other standards, Sharia standard. That was my second question. And another thing was regarding the exiting of maybe the Sharia party in case if there is a conventional. Thank you.
With regard to all Sharia standards, we are not going to develop governance standards. But for example, we have Sharia standard on investment accounts. We are developing a governance standard of that to improve and go into more details with regard to
Wakalatul Istismar something.
Justice. Yeah. Similarly, we have a standard on tawarruk. We have seen that standard on tawarruk is not being interpreted properly, and tawarruk is being used very widely used, while the Sharia standard requires it to be used on need basis only. and with some conditions which are there are not being followed by the market actually with regard to execution of transaction. So we will be coming up with a Tawarruk and commodity murabah governance standard, which will expand upon the requirements of that. So these are the example. With regard to the exiting part, interfinancer, we do not want to say that you do not exit or you exit. We are saying you follow what is written in the interfinancer agreement with regard to the exit process, and you remain transparent to each other. These are the requirements. Let's say, can you check if the conditioning? I think.
But how come if there are two parties and one is responsible for Sharia, in case if that party decides that it wants to exit, so over there should be some point where it should be restricted, or rather a mechanism should be there to ensure Sharia compliance.
Sure, that has to be there for sure. Thank you very much, sister. Thank you very much. Now the second part, Sister Fatma, you want to say something here? Okay, first we take a comment from the hall. Sister Fatma Chinar, please.
This is Fatma Chinar from association. Considering also my experience at syndicated financing, this governance standard is very important because, especially the governance standard is important, very clear, but implementation side is very, very critical. So I think we may have a common strategy how to implement this. I'm sure that everybody is aware of its importance, considering transparency and a good manner to manage those transactions. So we need some methodology system to implement this. So I may suggest to have both investors, issuers, arrangers to consider the importance of this implementation, and maybe some considering the issuing of the transactions as a process, or as an outcome, like impact investing, for example, is a new term. The institutions are collecting funding, but how they utilize this funding. Now we have impact measurement terminology while considering the transactions. Like this, in syndicated financing, considering the compliance with Sharia, we can also consider a measurement, or evaluation, or a process which would be a concrete and common understanding with among all of us, to evaluate how this transaction is compliant and fair, considering this framework of this standard. So I think implementation side is very important. The comments or feedbacks about how to implement this is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sister. Actually, no doubt about what you have said is the need. They say that the taste of the pudding is in its eating. You can have the best of the pudding. If you don't eat it, there is no advantage of that. For that, I would like to just submit one thing. AAOIFI standards, alhamdulillah, are being applied officially in a lot of countries, but still there is a need from the market participants to understand and to convince the regulators and the associations together to voluntarily adopt as well as to mandatory adopt the standard. Again, this is human work. It may not be perfect, but actually it is taking the things to the next level at least. It might not be like, making sure even a human intervention can always destroy an implementation of any good thing. So it is quite possible that there are people who don't want to implement it. But what needs to be done is that the industry players should become clear that these are the standards in the collective benefit of this industry. And this is something that needs to be communicated to the regulators, etc. as well. And institutions should also consider adopting some of the standards on a voluntary basis as well. So this is something that needs to be done collectively. AAOIFI can do its part. AAOIFI can do even the capacity building and awareness part. We actually conducted one of the trainings on syndicated financing, and inshallah we'll be going to do on this standard also. After a few months, we are going to do another session. And normally now our capacity building sessions are online, so anybody from around the globe can attend that. So these are the things that we are trying to do, that not only to develop but also to develop capacity on that part. But this thing needs to the second part is not in our hand. The second part is in the hand of the industry players and the regulators.
Just, I would like to add an example. Value-based intermediation for impact investing. Malaysia initiated in 2017 a guideline that asked for the Islamic banks, Islamic finance institutions for disclosure and to share their experiences. They initiated a community of practitioners. Like as you mentioned, it's a human base. So we need to come together and share our experience, how we, what kind of issues happen while considering this application of this standard. So maybe a disclosure from the institutions while they're trying to apply the standards, what are their experiences or benefits for them. So we can consider group of institutions sharing their experience with disclosure.
Sure, we'll try that. And now we take comment from Brother Waleed Sariyuddin, please.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Waleed Sariyuddin. I'm in charge of Islamic finance at SMBC, the Japanese bank Sumitomo Mitsui Group. We are very active in Islamic finance. As a matter of fact, has been the case for almost 15 years and much more so in the last period. Just wanted to, I did write a comment in the Q&A, and I think Sister Zainab, I think the name was from Kuwait Turk, specifically touched on this. When we talk about hybrid transactions, i.e. a conventional end in Islamic finance, two different tranches coming towards financing one single project or one single financing, or it may be a project, it may be a corporate, maybe what have you. The well-established practice, which we have done dozens of times, at least from my experience in the last 15 years, has been to always have a common terms agreement. A common terms agreement where the commercial terms underlining the overall financing, which is received ultimately by one party in two different tranches. The overall package of financing typically having the same commercial terms, same pricing, same tenor, same general undertakings, representations, what have you, which are more the business side, if you want, of the commercial side of the transaction, are typically sort of all reposited in a common terms agreement, which becomes a very efficient way of documenting this transaction. Now, clearly, the Islamic tranche will have its own suite of documents governing the way the funds are dispersed, the way the funds are paid back, a whole number of items that are more at the heart of the fact that this is a Sharia compliant financing as opposed to the other piece of the financing, which is not. So the CTA, or the Common Terms Agreement, so I'm inviting the committee to effectively sort of focus, perhaps, if I may say so, on the importance of this document at the heart of hybrid transactions and how potentially it may want to comment on the future of this document, which I believe is an engine of sort of permitting more flow of fund to come into projects in countries where Islamic finance is paramount. The intercreditor, or you as you termed it, the interfinancier agreement is also there, but tends to treat more items that have to do with the security package that is attached to a project. Because ultimately a project has a security package. Then various financiers, some of them Islamic, some of them conventional, will find a way to coexist, so to speak, and set the rules from the beginning of how the security is to be managed if one day there is a need to call on a security or exercise of security or what have you. So I think in the paper, in what you showed on the screen, there were a number of items that were associated with the interfinancier, as you called it, that are typically, in my humble opinion and experience, typically found in the famous CTA agreement. So,
can we just quickly try to take this point as a summary? What I understand from your point, you believe that we included, we did not include, the common terms agreement separately, and we some of those points we included in interfinancial agreements.
Exactly.
If you allow me, in the working group, we were struggling. People were coming from different countries. We started with the Works Consortium financing as the name of the standard. Then we realized that the Sharia standard has used the term syndicated financing. Then we use the term arranger, manager, investment agent. The problem is, I think the main problem is not that we are running away from a document which is very much necessary. Actually, probably we have used a different name for the same document. And one more thing, let me submit quickly. Our experience recently has been that most of the standards when we develop, people say you are asking too much documentation and you are asking too much of the process. So for last several standards, we try to consciously reduce the number of documents and reduce the number of process steps. So we take your point. Thank you very much, very positively. We'll take it to the working group. We'll see if the common terms agreement is needed separately. But as far as I can understand, I agree that a common terms agreement might be more necessary where each of the financiers is having a separate agreement directly with the customer. But all other, if you are using a single agreement, then every thing can be either directly in the financing agreement or in the interfinancer agreement. We might not need a third document. But this is my humble view. I'm not saying that we will not take your point. We'll take your point to the working group. We'll try to find a solution, and even if we need to clarify this part, we will try to clarify it. But I can tell you, because of the different banking practices in different countries, we found so many different terms in these discussions that it was very difficult to find one. And in the definitions, you can see for some of the things we said, also refer to this, also refer to this. In 2-3 places we said that. So we thank you for your kind comment and sharing the knowledge and experience with us. And we'll try to either come up with a separate document on this, or we'll clarify the document. We'll clarify that that these contents are to be part of to become a part of this interfinancer agreement, and then we'll clarify it clearly. Or what we do, that the third option that I believe, that if there is not a single agreement by the customer or all the by the banks with the customer, rather each bank is having a separate agreement. In that situation, the common terms agreement should separately be there as well. Again, like no comment, these comments are very valid, very valuable to us, and that is the real purpose of bringing it to the market. So we have to move on, Brother Walid, if you permit. You have another comment?
Sure. No. I was going to say, I mean, to the extent you think for more interact, I'm happy to interact with you separately, just to give more information on what we've seen in the market. Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And we'll request your comments in writing as well, and sister your comments as well. Those experts who are actually working in the field, they can kindly provide us some comments in writing as well. That will help us.
It's no problem. Thank you very much.
I think there is by mistake a comment. Sorry. Brother Mizanur Rahman has there is a mistake. How we need to use CFI here? I think there is some he posted something by mistake, but so I'm not sure about it. So I'm just dropping this one. I think that I'm not sure whether it's related.
There's one more hand raised, but we're not sure that we can allow them or not.
Brother Muhammad Abdul Razak will see if the time allows. We have not even reached the halfway, and we have reached more than half time of the. Till when we are continuing?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. So we have more than halfway done in terms of time, but less than halfway done in terms of this. But inshallah, let's try to take it. So, Brother Muhammad Abdul Razak, as soon as possible, I'll try to take your comment by voice as well. Brother Mizanur Rahman has a very good comment. If the lead arranger is a conventional bank, how will they issue initial fatwa? Actually, we have said that that in that case, if the lead arranger is a conventional, then an Islamic side lead arranger need to be specified separately. This is a requirement of the standard. But it's a good comment actually. And now I can answer with the same answer. I can answer the earlier question by Brother Ahmed Tahir. In the case of hybrid syndicated financing transaction, is a common terms agreement for Islamic finance and termination term acceptable, or they must be segregated terms. So there has to be, there can be a common one, but you have to identify and segregate the Islamic related things. And I'm going to take you through the standard. Some more points will be clarified when I take you through there. Brother Abdul Razak has a comment that I would suggest to let the customer decide which lead arranger among the banks should provide the provisional fatwa, as you may have multiple lead arrangers in a large syndication. Thank you very much. It's a good point. We need to clarify it in the mandate. The mandate has to clarify that part. So it will be clarified in the mandate. Thank you very much. It's a good comment, sir. Brother Anwar Subra, welcome, sir. It's always good to have you on the public hearings and have your great comments. Definition X, lead arranger, also referred to as lead mandatory arranger or lead manager. This is not a must. A lead arranger may not be the lead manager. In fact, the joint syndicated financing CFI may be a lead arranger, but IFI must be a lead manager to supervise the Sharia compliant application. Brother Anwar, we took your comment. We said that for Islamic side, there has to be a separate lead arranger. So we use the single term. Again, we said that anybody want to use a different term, if terms doesn't matter. The use of terms in different markets is different. So we keep this option open to you by whatever name you called it, but we put the requirement that in case of hybrid, the Islamic side should have a lead arranger, manager, whatever you call it. Thank you very much, sir, for your comment. Brother Hisham Tahat has another comment, page 13.13 of the standard. I think I will please there. Okay, brother Hisham's comment is page 13.13 of the standard document claims that the standard will explain the role of each stakeholder in every life cycle of the syndication, while it's not the case as shown later when the emphasis on the pillars of the governance. The pillars of the governance relate to those stakeholders, so we actually divide it there. But again, because the lead arranger is a stakeholder, the participant banks are stakeholders. So I think we try to say the same thing, but we take a comment of your comment noted, and if need is there, we'll make an amendment to the wording, inshallah. Brother Saifullah Azad has another comment. Syndicated financing structures have a function called facility agent. Although this role is often played by the lead manager or syndicated financing, but this is a separate function. So it is pertinent that this function needs to be defined separately and proper consideration be given to its roles, responsibilities, and relationships with other parties. Let me ask a question here. Those sitting in the hall, do every syndication here in Turkey also have a facility agent? Do you have a facility agent?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the function of the facility agent different from the lead arranger?
Actually, lead arrangers mainly start with the beginning. Actually, we cannot really separate both of them.
Actually, we have separated the trustee part. The trustee is the one who holds the investment and the security, and who has to enforce the security in case of need. The problem is with the names. So facility agent, if I'm able to identify exactly the functions of the facility agent, I may be able to let's see what needs to be done. We have identified two main things. Yeah, lead arranger who can be multiple co-arrangers as well. Then for Islamic side, there has to be lead arranger separately to make sure that Sharia compliance is there. Then we have identified the trustee or fiduciary or in some cases it may be called investment agent as well. So this is something that we have identified as of now. So where does the facility agent fall in? What is exactly his terms of reference?
Actually, the cases that we have been through is much more due to the fact that Turkey is very close to Western markets. So many of the transactions that we are in syndication are based on the London or main Western parties. So in order for us to differentiate our facility structure from them, to make it,
From conventional,
yeah,
the hybrid
so
side.
we make sure that we have a distinct facility agreement that we can write down everything that we like to. This is the main difference, actually. This is why we have a facility agreement and the facility agent, apart from being a lead agent.
Okay. Brother Muhammad Shafullah Azad, we take note of your comment. We need to see how we can incorporate that claim. Again, from our perspective, we identified different names were being used for the same function. But if the function of the facility agent needs to be identified separately, we will discuss with the working group and we'll do that. What I request, Brother Muhammad Shafullah Azad, you and Sister Nana, you, that if you can kindly provide a small comment in writing with regard to what facility agent is supposed to do. So then we will clearly define as in the standard either the facility agent is separately, or we believe that what is already there in the, as the trustee covers it, then we will clarify that in some jurisdictions facility agent is there and which covers which covers the following functions. So this way, we at least we will make sure that we don't miss out on anything important. Thank you very much, brother and sister, for your kind comments. Sometimes in an inter-creditor agreement, conventional participants will try to impose that any payment will be calculated on interest basis. How the standard deals with that? Brother Muhammad Al-Bashir, brother, thank you very much for your kind comment. Actually, this issue is the Sharia standard issue, not our issue. We just made a condition that Sharia principles and rules are to be followed, and we said that there has to be a Sharia board of each participant getting involved in that, and there has to be a lead arranger putting in the initial fatwa. Their Sharia board will put an initial fatwa. We do not go into nitty-gritty as to how we handle this issue. We just said that principles of Sharia are to be fulfilled, which means that we are very clear hybrid tranche and Islamic tranche are to be separate. The conventional tranche and the Islamic tranche are to be separate. In this situation, from our perspective, we do not need to go in that detail, which is to be addressed by the Sharia standards and addressed by the Sharia board of the lead arranger initially, and then by all the participant banks. So thank you very much for your kind comment. But from our perspective, it has to be separate. Our part of the transaction has to be separate. This is the, this is the mother of all evils, that we try to put everything with conventional in the same agreement. So the first thing that we are asking is put two different things. Brother Ahmed Tahir has a comment. In recent some syndication structure, there is a function of sustainability. Sister Fatma is like supporting your point, like with regard to the sustainability. Actually, on sustainability and responsible finance, AAOIFI in past had a standard. Our corporate social responsibility standard covers the sustainability and responsible finance elements in quite detail. But there are new things coming to the market, and we believe that our old standard needs a revision. So we are already in the process to update our standards. So it will be responsible finance or sustainable finance standard coming up from AAOIFI, which will be revising our standard number 7 on corporate social responsibility, and will be bringing the newer requirements. I believe that if we are going to bring in a separate standard on that part, we don't need to integrate this thing here in the syndication part, because we need to keep focused on this. So I think we cannot put it as a mandatory requirement here that sustainability element has to be considered. So that standard, inshallah, will be taking care of that. All AAOIFI standards are to be taken as a whole. You cannot just pick and choose that I want to pick this standard. So inshallah, that part will be covered there. Thank you very much, brother, for your comment. he has talked about joint sustainability coordinators. That is not something that we can put in this standard, I would again say. But again, this is my comment. It does not necessarily mean that working group and board have the same comment. Maybe we can consider putting that sustainability coordinator part. But before sustainability coordinator, then we need to put a Sharia coordinator. For us, sustainability comes after Sharia. So it will, again, as I mentioned earlier, that some people are saying that AAOIFI is putting more and more requirements. So while it might be a good practice to have sustainability coordinator, but then you can just see that then you will say, okay, there should be Sharia coordinator. So then eventually the market will come back to us and will say, you are putting too many requirements. So yes, it might be a good thing to do, and we are coming up with sustainability related standards. So inshallah, it will be covering that. Brother Ahmad, is SRI and ESG included in this standard? Not in this standard, but the standard that I have referred to now. Brother Amir is saying that Amir Muhammad is saying interfinancial is among conventional and AAOIFI. The common terms agreement will be covered as part AAOIFI syndicated agreement, including the term sheet. Brother Amir, I think we need to consider something on that based on the comment by Sister Zainab, inshallah. Brother Amir is saying that in syndicating financing, there are individual agreements just as syndicating financing agreement. Yes, we will consider, inshallah. This is already covered, brother. Brother Muhammad Saifullah Azad, the standard mentions the need to more than one Sharia supervisory board to govern various aspects of transaction in this financing. This may create complexity of product offering and financial closure, since the need for approval from multiple SSBs at many stages of the transaction will delay important decisions. In Bangladesh, we need to have product restructuring on syndicated financing, which delay further. Brother Muhammad Saifullah Azad, let me quickly answer this thing, because I think I discussed this thing earlier as well. What we are saying that during the whole phase, you do not need multiple Sharia boards. You need only the lead arranger Sharia board from the beginning till the end. Only at the end, when the final product is being approved and the agreements are being signed, at that stage, the Sharia boards of the respective participation banks have to approve the transaction. At that stage, they will have the initial fatwa available from the Sharia board of the lead arranger that will help them to like do it quickly. So, and if they can rely. But if we make one single board, the problem is from legal perspective, one single board cannot be become responsible for all of the boards. For example, you just say that, for example, like, 5 banks came to one transaction and one of the Sharia board was formed, a separate Sharia board was formed, which was different from all the 5 boards. Now, what happens? This is acceptable to Sukuk, because Sukuk is a instrument which is tradable in itself. So for Sukuk, we require that for Sukuk there should be a separate Sharia board. So for Sukuk, nobody need to go to the individual Sharia boards. It is one time, yes, you can take approval, but otherwise you have to rely on the Sukuk Sharia board. And particularly a common man investing in that or a corporate entity investing in that will rely on that, because they don't have a separate Sharia board for that. For this one, the problem is that putting one Sharia board become responsible will create exceptions from a lot of Sharia governance requirements of AAOIFI and the respective regulators, because the respective regulators and AAOIFI keep the Sharia board responsible for the transactions of the respective bank. So if the respective bank Sharia board later comes and say, okay, we did not approve it and we don't like it, so what will happen? You just think of it like during Sharia audit, if the issue comes in Sharia audit that this transaction is not good, what happens then? So this is important to keep one board initially to give the initial fatwa on the structure, but each one of them has to approve. I think this was discussed in board at length, but again, we take your comment and we'll see what can be done. Yes, sister.
Considering the implementation process, I think all the institutions apply for each transaction, apply for their capital market course in their own countries. So as you also here paid visits to the central bank, and other authority institutions. So AAOIFI's dialogue with local authorities is critical because a centralized structure, it would be easy to manage the implementation process, because if you have dialogue with the local authorities at related countries and put the importance of this governance at the issuance stage as a process, not as separate tool or something. I mean, we should consider this as a part of the transaction process. So I think the authorities, regulatory bodies who embed this standard to their processes, maybe approval processes, would be useful or doable for implementation stage.
Fully agreed, sister. Fully agreed. Thank you for your kind comment. Brother, you have a comment? No. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we are having so many comments. They will not let me move on. Brother Amir has another comment. In case AAOIFI exit, the convention would be appointing an AAOIFI to monitor in compliance for Sharia. This is written or not written? Thank you very much for your comment, Brother Amir, but I think it's not written. So it's a good point that if there is, but if the AAOIFI exits, only the AAOIFI who is the leading exits, then other remaining AAOIFIs have to appoint another lead to do it. I think it should be very clearly written in the exit mechanism as well as in the interfinancial agreement, how it will work. I think, thank you very much for your comment, brother. But this is an important point, Sister Zahra, Sister Alia, please make a note of it, that in this situation, we need to incorporate this properly in the standard. Brother Sadaqat Khan has a comment. Thank you, Brother Sadaqat, for being here with us. In which type of syndicated financing projects AAOIFIs must not participate or take the lead? Or the projects restricted by Sharia? I suggest you specify such projects clearly in this standard to avoid any confusion. Brother Sadaqat, I believe that this is the subject of the Sharia standard, and if they kept it open, then we should not be putting a burden on it. So I think we should put the conditions that on what conditions Islamic finance can become partner with conventional finance for consortium financing. So what are the conditions and how they need to segregate? This is our responsibility to do in this standard, but putting restrictions, I think, is not our requirement here. But again, this is my comment. We'll take it to the working group if they think differently from me. Brother Amir is saying common terms will be part of interfinancial agreement and based on the respective rights, conventional and AAOIFI will be managed. Common terms cannot be treated independently than interfinancial agreement. Now, this is the disagreement because Brother Muhammad Amir has a view that it has to be included. So we'll take it to working group. We'll see if it has to be separate. If you ask me, I will stick to 2 documents only. Initial everything in mandate, later everything in interfinancial agreement. I don't want a third agreement because that can have confusion. But what needs to be included, we should not miss it out. So anything that is being included, that needs to be included in facility extent agreement or the common terms of reference, etc. So we'll have to make sure that we don't miss them out. So the requirements we will make sure that are covered, but number of documents being more like 4 or 5 documents, I feel that can create more confusion. A good question. In hybrid financing, AAOIFI and CFI together, is it permissible for an AAOIFI to be lead arranger while CFI is participant? A very good question. I think we discussed it in the working group, and our conclusion was, and I think actually Sharia standard has this thing, I think, covered. This is a good question. I think we tried to cover this thing. In a nutshell, my answer is that you need to segregate. Even in that case, you need to segregate. But the question is, let me ask a question to you. You are an Islamic financial institution, and you take the fee that you made an arrangement to get a conventional interest-based financing. Would it be acceptable? For me, the quick answer is no. So if you have to hold only the Islamic part, not the conventional part. If you become leader in a transaction where Islamic and conventional both are there, and you take the fee based on the conventional part also, or you facilitated the conventional part. Actually, the problem is, unfortunately, we are living in the same universe and we have to interact with each other, with the conventional counterparts as well. But otherwise, if you see the simple teaching of Quran is that you facilitate with each other and coordinate with each other in the things of good and for the goods of piousness and taqwa, and you do not coordinate with the things which are sin and against the will of Allah. So the point is simple, that a coordination in a manner that you facilitate them and you even get a fee out of that, I think that should not be acceptable. I think Sharia standard also has covered this thing, and I think we have also covered. So in a nutshell, it should not be allowed. Brother Muhammad Abdul Razak has another comment. There is a recent trend in the syndication market with dual muraba tranches, one being compliant with Sharia standard 59 and other not, as some IFIs are not bound to follow the Sharia standard. Is this considered as a hybrid syndication, as two distinct muraba tranches were being arranged by the lead arrangers? What about the provisional fatwa? One would be compliant with AAOIFI Sharia standard 59 and other not. Sharia was Sharia even before standard 59 came in. So to be honest, for me, the issue is the issue that 59 actually standard 59 brought in was that in 2 or 3 of the matters like rollovers and those things, it clarified some of the matters. The point is that if you say that in the same country there are 2 different regulatory regimes or 2 different fatwas going on at the local level, then it will be very, very difficult to say. I don't want to say that this is haram and the one following AAOIFI Sharia standard is halal. I don't want to say that. For me, to be honest, having them as 2 different distinct tranches will also be a problem. In a nutshell, the solution is simple, that every bank is doing their own transaction, their own Sharia board is approving it, and their own Sharia board in this case is the one that is given the mandate to define what is Sharia and what is not. So, very difficult question. Now the answer is AAOIFI standards define a hierarchy of Sharia principles and rules. In AAOIFI's hierarchy of Sharia principles and rules, the Sharia standards stand first, and then the country Sharia regulations, and then the country Sharia board's rulings, then the accounting side, then the ruling of the respective Sharia board. Now, when we say in this standard that it has to be Sharia compliant, when it complies with Sharia principles and rules. Now, in a country which adopts AAOIFI standards, the Sharia principles and rules are clear that AAOIFI standard is the first one which needs to be applied. If they don't comply with AAOIFI standard, then it is not compliant with Sharia principles and rules. I'm not saying it is haram, please. I'm not the one to say. I'm not a mufti, I'm not a scholar. I'm not saying it is haram. I am saying it is not in line with Sharia principles and rules, because the Sharia principles and rules start with AAOIFI Sharia standards. Now, if there is a country that does not adopt AAOIFI accounting or AAOIFI governance standards or AAOIFI Sharia standards or both, in that situation, this question becomes invalid. Then even you are not required to do this part. Then it's up to you as to how you want to go. But from our perspective, we bring our standards as an integrated set, as a complementing set to each other. So from this standard perspective, if there is a standard non-compliance of standard 59, then that is not compliant with Sharia principles and rules. I'm not saying it's haram. I'm saying it's not compliant with Sharia principles and rules. So this, I think, is the quick answer to your issue. I can tell you, we will not like to go into this detail in the standard. So your comment is very important for some of the markets, I can understand, but we do not want to honestly go for further detail in this part. And in the standard, we cannot say, okay, there can be something which is claimed to be Sharia compliant, but not in line with the AAOIFI standard. So what verdict we will have on that? It will be very complicated. The quick verdict is, we define Sharia principles and rules. If your transaction is in line with Sharia principles and rules, you are in compliance with this standard. If your transaction is not in line with Sharia principles and rules, we don't count you Sharia compliant tranche. And let me clarify one more part. Unfortunately, this has become a very common habit amongst us that we call tawarruk as murabah. I can well understand the transaction that is being referred to here is tawarruk, not actually a murabah, because the issue of standard 59 actually comes on tawarruk, not on the real murabah where you actually purchase the goods and sell them. So I would request all of you that whenever we refer to a transaction, we should be clear about its nature. When we say murabah, there must be real goods which are purchased and sold to the customer. And when we talk about tawarruk, we should mention about tawarruk. Brother Ahmed Tahir, under Sharia Standard 24, Clause 5, participation of AAOIFI with conventional banks state this could be done on a condition that accounts and deal manager arrangement of the two types of financing are kept separate. Thank you very much. I think we kept the same requirement in our standard as well. That means the must to be a separate Islamic finance term sheet and common terms agreement. Brother, this is perfectly all right. Only thing is that we are not calling it common terms agreement. But again, we will actually in the definition we said terms of reference, not common terms of agreement. We can make it as an optional choice, but we do not want to add a new document. But again, we'll see if the board agrees to add a new agreement. Brother Mohammed Saifullah Azad said, syndicate finance itself is too complicated and client sponsors do not like so many stages of financing process. It seems the standard is too long to implement. I can't answer this. We try to keep it as short as possible. We are right now arguing on not having 3 documents, only having 2 documents. But again, let me be very clear. Sharia compliance is a must. For the ease of and convenience of your customer, if you want to compromise on the principles of Sharia compliance or the principles of justice and equity, I believe that this is not fair. The standard only wants to streamline the process. And I can tell you that some of these processes are already there. The integrated agreement, the terms of reference or the common terms agreement, these things are already there. You just need, we have just put it in a proper perspective. Mr. A.R. Zulfiqar Al-Farouk. Assalamu alaikum. What is the AAOIFI rule about commitment fee which is applied when customer doesn't use the syndicated facilities? It's a Sharia issue. Actually, I believe that our Sharia standards normally do not allow it, but there might be some conditions where it may be allowed against the effort done. So it is against if it is against the effort done, depending on the wording of the contract for the commitment for the fee. So if it is the agent fee against the services, then it is allowed. But purely against a commitment, I believe it is not allowed. So the same commitment fee, if you put it as a commitment fee, might not be allowed. But if you put it as agent's fee for doing the services, irrespective of the success of the project or not, then it will be allowed. So it depends on mainly on how the contract is drafted. So if you draft the contract that customer will pay commitment fee of this much, then I think it's haram. But if you say the customer will will compensate for the efforts of the agent or the lead arranger already done, even if it decides not to do it by this amount, then I think this is acceptable. So saying the commitment fee is not allowed, fee against services offered, even if the financing is not taken, is allowed. So in Sharia, a lot of things are dependent on how you actually do them. This is a Sharia issue. I don't think that we want to cover it in the standard, but Sister Zahra and Sister Alia, please take a note of it. Shall we put it in the standard or not? We'll just ask the working group and the board if they feel if it is important to do. Okay, is only one escrow account for both AAOIFI and CFI is permissible rather than separate for each? Security documents can be single package for CFI and AAOIFI together. I believe a single security agent can work if all the Sharia conditions are there. So if the single fiduciary or the single trustee or the investment agent can work and single escrow account can work, I think money is fungible. Mixing it is not a problem. We have not put a condition that it must be escrow account must be separate. Brother Amir and Sister Zahra, please make a note of it with regard to escrow account. Like we can clarify either way. I think, but it is important to mention. Thank you very much, Brother Saifullah. Brother Amir is saying, I think it is written, which is written, I just need. Brother Amir, about what? It is written, I don't know with what we are talking about, what is written. Okay, Brother Ahmed Tahir said that, sorry, it's a comment rather than a question. Okay, we noted your comment, sir. There are no individual agreements as part of syndication, otherwise it will not be syndicated but bilateral financing. Brother Amir is saying, I think it's still there is some possibility, but we take a note of your point, sir. Oof, so many questions. 52 questions answered till now. Alhamdulillah, it's good because it makes things like, a bit, keep them a bit interesting, and it shows actually how we actually get the benefit from this public hearing. Now, coming to the key pillars and principles of Sharia compliance, normally of Sharia governance for these type of transactions. Normally, AAOIFI has 5 pillars of Sharia governance. Sharia compliance is the first one: accountability, fairness, transparency, and responsibility. These are the 5 pillars of Sharia governance that we follow. And then we, for each of the standards, we define some of the core principles. So these are the principles here. I'm not going to explain each one of them. We can take comment, but I can tell you that based on the 5 pillars, we identified that what are the principles. So any comments? And now, when we define these principles, these are the basis for defining the whole process. The standard is not written in the sequence of the principle. The standard is written in the sequence of the process flow. But these are the core principles which apply. So the effective Sharia compliance structures have to be there. Fair treatment of and amongst stakeholders has to be there. Equitable and fair treatment of and amongst syndicated participants has to be there. Sorry, it is okay, among equitable and fair treatment. Yeah, the points covered are different. Principles seem similarity, but the customers are the points are different. Transparent interaction of and amongst syndication participants is important. Effective oversight is needed. Transparency and mutual disclosures are very important, particularly at different stages. Code of conduct and ethics need to be followed. So these are the 7 core principles, and then there are some principles that we identified within them, which are the basis of the whole of the standard. Standard is written in a process flow style, means that we have taken each of the stage, and from each of the stage we have identified, like, what are the respective parties and their responsibility. So the parties that we have covered are lead arranger, security agent, syndication participants, and customer. Parties to all the parties shall be responsible at each stage with regard to their respective part of the transaction. So the responsibilities are divided in stages for each of the parties. Now, what are the phases that we have covered? Awarding of mandate, marketing and negotiation, transaction close, continuity of transaction, changes in the transaction before intended maturity, and maturity at the transaction. Now, this is told as the life cycle. Now, we come to one by one on each of the phases. First phase is Part C, considerations at the time of awarding of mandate. Now, at the time of awarding of mandate, there is one issue that was discussed in the working group at length, and the problem was that some of the requirements related to this stage are related to the customer. The transparency at the end of the customer is also important, but the customer is not within the mandate of AAOIFI. The customer is not within the mandate of AAOIFI. So we have put some minimum requirements with regard to the mandate, which covers some of the requirements of the customer. Otherwise, there were some more requirements related to customer, but we decided that those are not possible actually to be put as a responsibility. So what we said here, a potential lead arranger, at this point of time, he is not the lead arranger. This time he's potential lead arranger and other arrangers and the potential customer shall exchange all current, relevant and accurate information and details about the customer, the underlying assets, and the transaction and structure. Then we've talked about transparency. Here, we put a minimum part of the potential customer through expression of interest. That there has to be an expression of interest, preferably to be available publicly. Again, it is important for transparency. We are not saying that he must work with only one arranger, but he must not work only with one arranger. He can work with one arranger because if I am a customer and I have good relationship with a bank, I may decide not to go for public, and I can a public announcement of expression of interest, and I can just ask this financer to arrange for me. Or it is possible that I reach out to one of the banks to have the financing, and the bank says, okay, we cannot do it alone, we need to have a syndication. So both situations can be there. So we kept it as an option, but we said that it is better that there is an expression of interest, which is preferably to be publicly available. But if it is not publicly available, then at least to the single potential lead arranger, or maybe 2 or 3 of them, there should be a proper transparent communication of the proposed terms by the customer that what we need, so that they have to provide a fair opportunity for service. Then we said that mandate is the most important first document. So the mandate must include some of the important things, like initiation of the syndication process must be clearly mentioned there, the proposed terms of syndicated financing, because these are the terms proposed by the customer. It is possible that the syndication participants don't agree to that, but this is something that is proposed by the customer. Then document the customer's commitments to ensure compliance with the Sharia principles and rules, relevant regulations. And now this is very important part, that we said that we cannot put the responsibilities on the customer, but through mandate, the customer shall bind himself that I will ensure compliance with Sharia principles and rules. Because the point is, you can say, okay, customer is not subject to Sharia principles and rules. Customer is a normal entity, it's not subject to Sharia principles and rules. But if you are working with a customer and you want to have a Sharia compliant transaction, for some of the aspects, the customer's Sharia compliance is a must. So for that purpose, through mandate, we inserted this thing very carefully, that through mandate, the customer has to agree that he need to have compliance with the Sharia principles and rules and the regulations, and authorize the arrangers to arrange the syndicated financing transaction. The lead arranger has to obtain fatwa from its own Sharia board as a provisional fatwa. And then we have put in some requirements that what are the benefits of this, like it can help facilitate the whole process, as I explained earlier. Then the conflict of interest. We believe that even at the award of mandate, there can be some conflicts of interest. So we said that those conflicts of interest which arise even at this stage need to be avoided. So from that perspective, if there is a existing or prior customer relationship, that need to be mentioned. if there is a risk of conflict of interest because of that. An existing financial or non-financial exposure which is there needs to be identified. A fee arrangement between the potential arranger and potential customer should be also be identified, and if particularly they are different from the market now. So if the market is like 1% for the large transactions and about 2% for the small transactions, if the customer is paying 5%, it means that there is a conflict of interest situation coming in. In the conflict of interest, there are additional issues. In order to avoid such a situation, we say that negotiation process shall be transparent for giving the mandate, and the potential arranger shall disclose any possible conflict of interest, and potential arranger shall not accept a mandate to be arranger if it is probable that such mandate, if so awarded, will result in jeopardizing the interest of a party or parties of the syndicated financing transaction. This is a harsh condition, but this is what is ethically required. That ethically, if you are in a position and if you accept that mandate and go ahead with that, and that will jeopardize the rights and responsibility rights of the some of the parties, then you should avoid that. I can see there is one comment. We can take comments from the hall here and as well as from the participants there. I think there are 2 comments, but let me quickly go through some of the basic requirements of Part C. Then Sharia compliance in a hybrid syndicated financing. So here we try to answer some of the questions that were raised there. So first thing is that should be preferably participated by AAOIFIs only. Best thing is you don't participate with conventional. This is the best thing. But at times we are not living in an ideal world. So we need to do what is needed at times. So if the customer financing need, so there are 2 conditions. If the customer financing needs cannot be met by AAOIFIs alone, or if the AAOIFI is willing to become syndication participant. So where there are 6 AAOIFIs here, for example, there are 6 participation banks. So the first thing is syndication, which should be amongst you 6. But if all the 6 don't have a capacity together for that, or if out of the 6, 4 say that we don't want to go for that transaction, we have liquidity issue, or we don't want to go with this customer. So this is the first condition. Second is if the customer has no specific preference for Sharia compliance transaction, has already awarded to mandate to a conventional financial institution as arranger, and the customer and the arranger are willing to include AAOIFIs as syndication participant by having separate tranche of Sharia compliant financing to be approved by respective SSB. So first thing is if Islamic comes, but the amount is not sufficient. And the second is if the conventional is already appointed, but then the customer also wants, and the conventional financial institution also reaches out to the Islamic financial institution and say that, okay, we want you to be part of it as well. But then they have to agree that they will make sure that this tranche will be separate and Sharia compliance will be ensured for that tranche. In this situation, first thing, the sanctity of the Sharia compliant tranche shall be maintained in all circumstances. So that needs to be that has to be segregated, and it has to be the sanctity must be ensured. The arranger shall be clearly identified. The arranger for the Sharia compliant tranche. So in that situation, the Sharia compliant tranche will have a clear arranger. That arranger has to fulfill the responsibility like for initial fatwa and whatever are the responsibilities for the arranger for the Islamic tranche side. And mandate to such arranger should be awarded specifically for the arrangement and execution of the Sharia compliant tranche. So we said that the mandate of that party has to be separate as well, because, for example, the mandate is given to conventional. In the last slides, we talked about the mandate must have the customer agreeing on compliance with Sharia principles and rules with regard to the transaction and with regard to the underlying asset. So if you say that, okay, conventional got the mandate, we did not get a mandate, we just go with the conventional mandate. The conventional mandate does not put any condition on the customer with regard to Sharia compliance, and even the other requirements of this standard may not be fulfilled. So we put a condition that then a separate tranche has to be there. We need to be very clear on this part, because syndicated financing has very bad reputational risk for Islamic finance or participation finance. Because when you work with conventional and you do not distinguish the things clearly, it impacts your your reputation very badly. The customer will say, oh, we don't know what is Islamic, what is conventional. It is only the conventional, they arrange it all. We got the money, we are happy. So this is something important that we need to consider, that this sanctity need to be maintained as a separate branch and a separate mandate need to be given. Now, till part C, if we have any comments here and then from there. So if we have any comments from the room first. Okay, so let me take the questions from the online participants. Brother Saifullah Azad has a comment. Humble request to answer, is only one escrow account for both IFI and CFI is permissible rather than separate for each? Security documents can be single package for CFI and IFI together. Both of the things are separate, brother. For example, with regard to escrow account, I believe it can be same and we can take a note of it and we can allow it to be a same, because with regard to money, we don't have a problem. It is fungible. It can be put in one account. The second part of your question is about security documents can be single package for CFI and IFI. I believe in some cases, yes, in some cases, no. Now, in what cases it can be yes? For example, it's a Murabha transaction. The Murabha transaction is executed. And then after execution, there is a receivable. Against the receivable, there is a security. The security for conventional and Islamic in that case might be the same. But if I'm doing ijara and conventional is doing finance lease, or they are doing just a loan. So I have a ijara or diminishing musharaka as Islamic financial institution, and the conventional has like a simple loan or a finance lease. Now what happens that from my perspective, according to Sharia, I own the assets proportionately. It's not that I just have a security. It's more about owning the assets. And if I don't own it, then it's not Sharia compliant. So in that situation, how you can put in the security documents that there is a single security document and half of the amount is owned and half of the amount is about representing an ownership and half is representing a security. So the question is that this, we cannot have a single answer. Sister Azahra, please make a note of it. Based on what I mentioned, I think we need to provide a basis of conclusion because this is an important public comment. So with regard to escrow account, I think we need to take Sharia committee approval, and with regard to this point also, that it has to be subject to the approval of the Sharia board, whether a single security is acceptable or not. So if the product is where the ownership structure is there, then the single security cannot be there. Otherwise, it can be. One third situation coming to my mind. If the security is Sharia non-compliant, then what happens? Or part of the security is Sharia non-compliant. So for example, part of the security is fixed assets and part of the security is conventional bonds. What happens? The conventional bonds are not acceptable as per AAOIFI Sharia standards to be a security against a Sharia compliant transaction, which means that you cannot take that part of security. So with regard to acceptable security, I think we can slightly clarify this part and put detailed basis of conclusion. But this thing will still has to go through the Sharia board at the time whether we can have a single security document. If it is a sale-based transaction where a Murabha has executed, Tawarruk we don't like, but even if Tawarruk is there and it has executed, then the receivable is there. And against the receivable, you can have a common security like conventional. But for the transactions where you own the assets wholly or proportionately, in those situations, you can't do that. Brother Waleed has another comment. What does it mean in practice for the customer to undertake or agree to an obligation of Sharia compliance at their own level? Brother, the point is that when the financing, it depends on the type of financing as well. And as a general principle, Sharia standards say that the financing has to be used for Sharia compliant purposes. But some situations, it becomes very necessary. So if there is an ijara asset, you need to see the use of ijara asset also. If the ijara assets use is Sharia non-compliant, you can't do it. If the customer's main business activity is not very clear with regard to Sharia compliance, then you need to take an undertaking from them that your money, your part of the money, they will not be using for any non-compliant thing. So there are multiple issues in that part. So we do not want to conclude all of them here. Actually, the respective Sharia board will have to take a decision on that. Brother Anwar Subrat, clients with complex business structures such as holding companies or multi-business investment may have multiple financing needs. It is not supposed to be a conflict of interest, but continuing business financial requirement. Otherwise, please clarify why it is a conflict of interest. This clause is set as this conflict of interest does not permit syndicated financing. Please adjust the text that this relationship may be disclosed but does not prohibit syndicated financing. Brother Anwar, I explained again, my view is based on what the working group and board have decided. But we take a comment, your comment, and we'll discuss it with the working group. I cannot conclude on this one. It's a strong requirement, I believe, and in some cases that a strong requirement might be necessary. We take a note of your point, sir. We have Brother Ibrahim Rashid. Would it be possible to have these presentations for us to go through and learn? Brother Ibrahim, this presentation actually is nothing more than the standard itself. There is no additional text in that. The standard is available on our website. The exposure draft of the standard is available on our website. You can always have access to it. That is available in PDF form. You can always have access to that. So I think one of our colleagues already provided a link to the document in the chat window. I would request Brother Sayyid to provide the link of the document again on the chat window. Brother Anwar Subra, clause 20b, first need to address that providing Sharia compliant tranche is acceptable provided it is not used to settle interest-based financing from CFI or from others. Secondly, Sharia compliant financing shall not be subordinated to interest-based financing. Third, if we refer to the principle in Sharia Standard 21 that it is permitted to invest in shares of the companies where interest-based borrowing must not exceed 30%, by the same token, interest-based financing in a hybrid syndicated financing transaction must not exceed 30% of the total financing amount. Brother Anwar, good comments. Let me first come one by one. Number one, Sharia compliant tranche is acceptable provided it is not used to settle interest-based financing from CFI or from others. Brother, actually, it is good to provide Sharia compliant tranche to settle interest-based financing. I don't know why you should not be allowing it. Actually, it is good that the customer is settling the conventional and coming to Islamic. So I think there is no harm in that. Maybe you can explain us further in written comments. The second point, Sharia compliant financing shall not be subordinated to interest-based financing. I think we mentioned this thing somewhere, but I remember discussion on this point in our discussions. I cannot recall exactly where we wrote it, but if we have missed it out, then for sure we will discuss it. We'll write it down somewhere, but I'm sure we have written it somewhere because it was discussed in the working group. But thank you very much. It's a very valid comment. Third, if we refer to principle in Sharia 21, that's permitted to invest again. Rather, the investment, the standard 21 is on financial papers and shares. Now it will depend on the time of the transaction. So if you are doing a musharaka, then in the musharaka you need to see these ratios. But if you are doing a murabaha or if you are doing a ijara, then you need to see only the use of your money or use of your asset. So this condition will be applicable on musharaka or any type of participating venture, where you need to see these ratios because these ratios are applicable on shares and financial papers. But if it is a transaction of ijara or murabha or salam or any other type of sale, etc., or diminishing musharaka for ownership of assets with rent, in all these situations, what you need to see is the use of your asset and the use of your money, but not the ratios of the bank or the customer. So I believe that it is again as per your comment is good. In case of participating ventures, yes, these ratios will apply, but we don't need to write it down because we said that this has to be according to Sharia principles and rules. We are not here defining the Sharia principles and rules. Yes, we agree with your point, but it is to be decided by the Sharia board. Brother Salman Ahmed, Assalamu alaikum. Please, can you confirm if international law firms who typically advise arrangers, agents, and lenders across the globe were consulted in formulation of the standard? This is integral to ensure harmonization application of the standard. Such firms should also be engaged by AAOIFI to produce a formal Q&A practice note for the benefit of the market to explain the standards from a legal perspective. Sometimes there is a disconnect in AOIFI standards and market practice, which result in inconsistent application of the standard, which dilutes the objective of these standards. Brother, there are two angles to your question. First angle is AOIFI has a lacuna or weak hole in the standard. And the second angle is that these law firms don't want to follow Sharia standards. They want to follow the best practices from the legal side. So both from the first angle, yes, we are 100% there to take comments. Actually, some of the law firms are our members, and even otherwise we request comments. What we can do, we can specifically send a request to some of the law firms who are engaged in Islamic finance to provide comments on this standard. To that extent, we take your comment very seriously. Thank you very much. It's very good. So what we will be doing, I request Sister Alia, Sister Zahra, that if we can just make sure that we submit this standard with a request for comments to some of the board and working group members who are representing the law firms, to the law firms which are members of AOIFI, and to some other law firms who are more active in the Islamic finance regime. So this we must do, and I think it's a good idea. The second part is unfortunate. Our experience is that law firms at times, the problem is that in the drafting of the agreements and everything, they draft it in a way that Sharia is compromised and legal requirements prevail. This is a problem which is an ongoing challenge all the time, to find a middle ground in a way that Sharia is not compromised and still you maintain the minimum legal requirements. But unfortunately, our experience with some of the law firms in case of Sukuk and the rating agencies and law firms particularly, I would say, that they try to dictate at times the terms which are similar to conventional, because Sharia is not primary for them. For AOIFI, Sharia is primary. So we actually define the standards in a way that Sharia should not be compromised while others may be compromised. Yes, we know it's a challenge to find a middle ground, to challenge a balanced position. So thank you very much. We will for sure do that, inshallah. We'll take their comments. But I can tell you based on my experience that some of their comments might not be acceptable for us because they compromise Sharia. Without any disrespect to the lawyers attending the meeting today. Those who are attending, I can tell you, they are committed to Sharia. But those who are not attending, but still writing the Islamic finance contracts are the risky people. Again, they are professionals, but their profession is law, not Sharia. That's the problem. Brother Walid has another point. When we talk about the Islamic tranche in a hybrid syndication and the need to have an AAOIFI being the lead arranger on such tranche, is the Islamic finance window of a CFI eligible as AAOIFI for this role? Thank you very much, brother. Our definition of Islamic financial institution, which we reproduced in this standard, includes that a window is an AAOIFI. So if there is a conventional financial institution who has the window, if they appoint their window as the lead arranger, we are okay with it because they have a Sharia board and all the things can be done. So technically, a window is an AAOIFI. So we don't even call it a CFI. So yes, it can be that their conventional investment banking department can be the lead arranger, and their Islamic finance window can be the arranger for the Islamic branch. It is completely acceptable. But then it should be two different teams. It should not be just using the name of window. Okay, we have a window also, so we can do both. This is something that we are trying to, this sort of practice we are trying to reduce in our new standards. Thank you very much. Again, very good comment, Brother Wali. Mufti Khwaja Nurul Hasan, Assalamu alaikum. Mufti Sahib, good to see you. Mostly in case of Ijara DM to be covered in the same letter of hypothecation, security documents of conventional lender and Islamic financial document only states about the amount and secured amount without specification of facilities or ownership concepts, etc. Khwaja Nurul Hasan, I believe this is happening, but I don't believe this is the right thing to do. Again, within the legal system, if you can find your way out, you should try to find a way out. So again, our objective is that if the things are clearly different, then those should be identified as different. Even for me, even if you create a hypothecation there, you need to write down that this hypothecation is coming because an ownership or beneficial ownership relationship exists. So that you cannot write in the conventional part. So for me, the security document should not be the same. The Islamic finance should have their own security documents. So I personally would like to say that we want to achieve this objective through this standard, that these security documents are generally separate, particularly where the ownership interest is there. Sister Nigat has added another comment. Sharia may evaluate the possibility of accepting conventional security if the principal and interest component, which could be easily estimated, debt portion and interest portion. Sister, it means that you are allowing the customer to continue with the conventional investment, which earns interest for him, and you give him Islamic finance to support that investment. I can just tell you this practice as per AAOIFI Sharia standard is not allowed. AAOIFI does not allow it. And I know that a lot of markets, some scholars have given an exclusion to that, and they said that at least to the extent of principle, you can take it. But AAOIFI standard, alhamdulillah, I was so happy to see it do not allow it. Because based on my past experience, I can tell you that it is quite possible that there is an arbitrage on that. And you are just facilitating the arbitrage. What happens, we have seen real life transactions. I saw them more than once. I saw them in Pakistan, I saw them in Bahrain, and I'm aware of them in UAE. The Islamic financial institution places money with conventional financial institution in form of tawarruk, which is controversial itself, takes on security a conventional bond, and the customer actually is just creating an arbitrage. So you are in an indirect way, Islamic financial institution is investing in a conventional bond through a conventional or a normal entity, leaving a spread for them. So Islamic financing at 5%, the conventional bond at 10%, and the customer saves 5%, or again, the ratios can be different. This practice must be abolished by Islamic financial institutions. AAOIFI Sharia standard does not allow it, but I think it goes beyond even AAOIFI Sharia standard. Even if it's not written in AAOIFI Sharia standard, it is written in Quran. Whenever you accept an interest-bearing security, it means that you are creating a support for that. If you don't provide financing, what will happen? They will sell that security to meet their liquidity needs. So you are creating a support to them to continue with that interest-bearing financing. So my humble submission, sister, it must not be allowed, and it is not allowed as per AAOIFI Sharia standards. Brother Anwar, it is not replacing aspect, but only payments of outstanding loans. Brother Anwar, we take your point. So it should not be used against payment of outstanding loans. Again, I believe it's the other way around of what I was saying to Sister Nigat just now. For Sister Nigat's situation, it was that Islamic financing is being provided so that the customer may continue with the interest-based investment. So that I believe must not be allowed. While if I provide Islamic financing to a customer to settle and pay the conventional finance, I think it must be allowed, and it should be preferred so that he is out of interest, or at least he reduces his interest-based financing and gets into Islamic financing. So these two things work in opposite way. I believe this one that I provide Islamic finance so that they settle conventional finance should be allowed. Sister Nigat has a question. If an institution is Islamic and conventional side, then will its conventional side be allowed to participate in a Sharia compliant syndicated financing where its Sharia wing is not participating? For me, a conventional wing of a conventional institution is a conventional financial institution, and the Sharia compliant Islamic window is the Islamic financial institution. If the placement is not through, or the participation is not through the window, then it should be in the conventional tranche, not in the Islamic tranche. In the AAOIFI and IFSB joint exposure draft that we issued for a Sharia governance framework is very clear in this part that that the conventional institution should be allowed to have Islamic finance transactions only through their windows. Because we have seen this thing that some global and large conventional financial institutions take a disadvantage and the Islamic finance players have become a disadvantage because they are normally smaller, because the conventional use their own strength as a conventional large institution and still go for the Islamic one. So again, only exclusion can be sukuk. If there are sukuk, conventional may be allowed to purchase the sukuk, but not to go directly for a Sharia compliant transaction. Sister Nighat has put up some of the comments in the chat window, and she's saying that I should try. She's trying to copy them. It's not possible. Let me see how we can handle that issue. Brother Sayyid, is it possible that you can copy from the chat window to Sister Nighat says that she has some comments in the chat window. I will do. This aspect will be covered in this standard of sister, that is a Sharia issue. So we will not be covering this aspect in detail in this standard. Okay. Too much less time left, too many comments coming in and people getting tired. Okay, let me try to be a bit quick now. I will not take comments for now. I will just explain about the remaining sections of the standard because the time is nearly over. And while we enjoy taking questions and responding to them, but at the same time, we need to cover the standard as well. What we request that whatever comments are unaddressed, whatever you write in the question answer window, even if I don't, even if I am unable to respond them today, we will take them to the working group anyway. So even if you have comments, you can write in the QA window. Second thing, you can provide us your comments in writing at governance@aoifi.com anytime. The standard will take some time to finalize. I think we have at least 2 months. We are holding public hearings, so this is the first public hearing. There will be one more in English and one more in Arabic. So inshallah, we have around 2 months. So even if by end of October we send the comments, it will be good. But right now, I'm not going to answer comments. I'm going to explain the remaining requirements of the standard. So part D is about.
She has 2 comments.
Now we'll take them if the time permits. Okay, considerations during marketing and negotiation. This is the stage where we have to ensure that the information memorandum is developed in a transparent manner. It has all the necessary information. It is developed in line with the best market practices and regulatory requirements. The arranger is responsible for that, but it must be shared with all potential syndication participants on a timely basis. It shall include the minimum requirements about customer, about the governance, like the board and the senior management of the auditors of the customer, detailed feasibility study and market analysis, detailed description of the transaction, its pricing, necessary financial information, etc. Where applicable, the phases of syndicated financing transaction and total period of completion along with milestones, and the details of profit distribution, loss sharing, etc. Details of arrangement fee and other related services payable to arrangers and other parties, even if there is security agent, etc. Details of the security agent along with respective rights and obligations, potential risks and strategies and instruments to hedge them as applicable to the customer, the transaction, etc. Credit and other relevant risk assessment by lead arranger and independent one as well. Name and brief profiles of the parties providing services related to syndicated transaction like arranger, guarantee, assurance, the kafil providers. Details of mechanism of final settlement and early settlement. Details of recourse to Sharia compliant credit enhancement arrangements like guarantees, takaful, etc. Undertakings, purchase undertakings particularly. Detail of Sharia compliant options attached to the financing transaction, including for example the conversion options, etc. Early repayment option, also early repayment option or restriction or repayment option, etc. The legal framework and the legal jurisdiction as well as dispute resolution mechanism should be there. Summary of various scenarios may be applicable to syndicated transaction with regard to early settlement. In case of early settlement, how to handle that, restructuring, rescheduling, default, what will be the conditions for that. So some minimum requirements of the information memorandum are these. Again, the main purpose, you can all see that the main purpose is to make sure that everything remains transparent. Then we have the second agreement, which is the interfinancer agreement. The lead arranger shall prepare in consultation with all potential syndication participants the interfinancer agreement, and we have referred to IFM. We have referred to that we do not want to define a specific format. So we mentioned to the standard setting bodies. Here, the standard setting bodies or the relevant regulators are referred to IFM or the respective country regulators. Interfinancer agreement at a minimum shall include the following: details of the syndicated finance transaction, customer and the underlying assets, the respective rights and responsibilities of the other parties, including in particular participants, details of the lead arranger and other arrangers and rights, responsibilities, duties, etc., details of the security agent and respective rights and responsibilities, significant details and process with regard to security, holding the security, title to the syndicated financing, underlying assets, and enforcement of rights on the same. Brother Fajar Nurulhasan, we have identified this title part to be identified here as well, and also in the documents. It needs to be done as per AAOIFI standard. Summary of the structure and the significant terms and conditions, etc., along with the summary term sheet. So the term sheet has to be part here as well. Conditions and process of pre-exit. Now, this is a condition that if a pre-exit is allowed, if pre-exit is not allowed to any of the participant or the arranger, then it should be clearly mentioned. But if it is allowed, then what are the conditions for that exit? So it needs to be there. We have mentioned the further details in paragraph 45 to 46. Sister Zara, there should be no space between 45 and 46 and half. Terms and conditions to ensure equitable treatment of the syndication participant and mutual responsibilities in this regard with regard to this part, and rights and responsibilities of the various parties in case of early settlement. So these are the minimum requirements. It's continuing. Protocols of sharing information. This is very important. The lead arranger or the security agent must have a protocol for sharing information among the participants in line with the standard. Condition and process of transfer of shares and shares of the syndicated finance transaction between the participants. So if the participants acquire shares from each other, so it's not an exit. So in that, it is because exit is where you either early settle or you sell to a party outside that participant. But if within the participants you are selling the share, you are transferring the asset, then it shall be subject to different conditions, and it shall be generally allowed. And then dispute resolution mechanism. In case of hybrid syndicated financing transaction, interfinancer agreement shall clearly identify and segregate the Sharia compliant tranche of the syndicated finance transaction along with the lead arranger with regard to such component of the syndicated finance transaction. Such lead arranger shall in turn be responsible to ensure compliance with the requirements of this standard. This is a very important point that in case of hybrid, it shall ensure proper enforceability of Sharia principles and rules and independent and equitable status. Somebody talked in the comments about the subordinated status. So we have clearly mentioned that the Islamic finance tranche, the Sharia compliant tranche, has to be equal enforceability and fair and proper enforceability and equitable status of rights and positions. So this is very important. It shall also specify the mechanism in line with Sharia principles and rules applicable in case of default, etc. So even if it's a conventional, led transaction or a hybrid transaction, but still these parts must be minimum defined. Conflict of interest we covered here. That I think we have discussed this point, so I'm not going to discuss in detail. But we are saying that customer pricing preferences shall be documented and communicated to the arranger, etc. The customer may have preference with regard to potential syndication participant. This is also possible that a customer wants that, okay, I want to work with this bank. If they are part of syndication, they are my preference. So if customer has a preference about syndication, then it's not a conflict of interest because he's the customer. So conflict of interest arises when the arranger gives preference. But if the customer gives preference, there is no conflict of interest. So we have defined this thing. And however, if the arranger deviates from the customer preference, then it must communicate it clearly. Now we come to part E, considerations during transaction close. So that was the interfinancer agreement and the mandate. And now we are coming to the transaction close. Transaction close means when you actually sign the agreements and disburse the money. So again, the transparency and disclosure requirements are there. One important point for the lead arranger is that you must ensure allocation of financing among the syndication participants, identifying the preferential allocations or allocation with a potential conflict of interest, etc. So you need to identify this part very clearly at that point of time that we are closing. Now we have this much of the intent is there. So when we got this much intent, out of that, how much we are going to allocate to each one of them and involve preference. The basis of allocation should need to be identified, particularly in that situation, as I've explained. And the basis, it is the basis of underwriting. If the underwriting was there by the lead arranger or any other one of the participants with regard to this part, then that need to be identified. Then the customer need to be updated about all the agreed terms, etc., related legal and contractual obligations and the requirement of Sharia principles and rules. And customers must be allowed reasonable time and opportunity to evaluate the final terms and everything. Arranger and other syndication participants shall preferably disclose any prior or existing business relationship. This is the part that I mentioned, that existing and prior business relationships may have in some situations a potential conflict of interest. So you need to identify that part on a transparent basis. The arranger, this thing is about the existing, but then going forward, there is another situation that obtaining any additional financing or service business either directly or by a different department, arm, or an associated entity or person is not leveraged on the syndicated financing transaction. So this is very important that, okay, I arrange this for you, but you give me this additional business. So we are saying that it should be independent. It should not, we are not saying you can't do additional business, but we are saying that it should not be leveraged upon that. Again, this is a matter of ethical behavior in doing business. Arranger shall ensure the associated appointments related to syndicated financing transaction, the security agent and the takaful service provider are made on arm's length basis. So the security agent and the takaful have to be arm's length, because again, you at times you have associated or you have the parties with whom you are working generally, or you can say, okay, I'll give you this advantage, you give me advantage somewhere else. So it should be on a fair basis. Then we've talked about that arranger may be more influenced to close a transaction because he has the fee also. Other participants may not be influenced that much, but because they don't have the fee. So the net yield for the customer, for the lead arranger, is more than the net yield for the participants. So at all times, this should maintain a high level of professional and ethical conduct. So it should be, again, we are not going for more details, but we are saying that ethical behavior is very important here. About the confidentiality part, that if I am a syndication participant, potential syndication participant, and I am provided with information, then I should not be using that information for my purpose. For example, the lead arranger approached me and said, okay, Umar, you want to be a part of this? I said, okay, let me think. But then I go on the back door and I just reach the customer directly and say, okay, why you are going to them? I can give you whole financing at a less rate. Or I don't take whole financing. Why you are paying arrangement fee to this person? So this is a real conflict of interest situation, that because I became aware of this through the information memorandum and other communication that was made with me, I became aware of this opportunity. So I used the back door directly to get the benefit on a direct basis. So a counter proposal or a standalone deal. So this is again a very unethical behavior. I can tell you most of the things that we are talking about ethical behavior here, we have noted these sort of things. The working group members and other experts have identified these sort of things. Actually, they happen in the market. They have gone through these things. One of the large banks was informed about this deal, and they directly approached and they said, okay, we can hold it alone. Why you are paying them arrangement fee, don't pay arrangement fee to us and we'll give you a discount of this much and you get it. So and the second part is when you get this information, you cannot share it with anybody else. You have to keep confidentiality. Now, considerations during the continuity of the transaction, there should be regular, the customer should provide the updates and must make sure that all the requirements which are there regarding financial statements and other things are provided. So these are the requirements of the customer. Syndication participants should share whatever the protocol they have agreed, as we discussed earlier. They should share the information about the customer if they are aware about anything that is going to impact them. So they need to be, they need impact one of them or each one of them. Like one of them is aware that the business is going down and it might be a risky situation. So some of the things have to be according to the sharing protocol, information sharing protocol shared with each other. Then Sharia compliance and governance, each one of them have to make sure the customer and the arranger and the participants have to make sure Sharia compliance and governance at all levels. Mutual sharing of issues, observation and knowledge in line with what I discussed earlier. Change of fatwa is an important aspect. So if there is a change of, I think we have completed the time. I'm trying to just complete it like, in 2 to 3 minutes. My apologies for that. We had so many questions that actually it got over time. So my apologies for that. Change of fatwa, we have requirements in Sharia Standard 29 and we are coming up with the exposure draft of Sharia decision making standard. These standards are actually going to cover the requirements with regard to change of fatwa. So we are not going to cover those requirements here, rather we are referring to that. Then we have the requirements with regard to early settlement of the syndicated financing transaction, that what should be the requirements with regard to early settlement. Again, the same considerations are there. The Sharia compliance has to be there, independence and avoidance of conflict of interest has been there. Pre-exit by syndication participant, we discussed this thing earlier, so it is included here that even one of the syndication participant, if they go for a pre-exit, these are the minimum requirement that it should be according to the interfinancer agreement, and the interfinancer agreement is the one that has to handle this issue. However, they need to inform the customer, obtain their prior approvals, etc., even if they transfer to others, etc. So some of the things that are there to avoid the conflict of interest we have identified in these sections. Then about restructuring and rescheduling, we have some requirements. Again, some of these things I have discussed from time to time in response to some of the comments. Respective parties' responsibilities at maturity. So the Sharia board has to give a final approval with regard to the maturity, the transaction of closure, the closure transaction. Like in case of Ijara, there is a transfer of ownership, and those things have to take place according to the Sharia standard. The standards is expected to become applicable on 1st July 2023. We intend to finalize it within this year. You can kindly provide your comment, particularly with regard to the application date, because if we finalize it by end of 2022, would it be possible to apply in 2023, or should we put a date of 2024? So with that, I can understand that last few sections I have been a bit quick just to explain the brief about it, and I am unable to take the comments or questions on that. With that, I think because the time does not permit us, so if I can request all of you again to provide the comments in writing with regard to these points, particularly those who are actually involved in the process, they can provide better comments to us. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here physically as well as online. And I think that this is a very interesting topic. A lot of people had a lot of comments on different aspects, and still every day when we go through this process, we know that how little we know. Every time we learn from you, we learn from the market interaction, and we hope that these comments will be will enable us to improve the standard. At my end, I would like to thank you all who are here physically, and those who are there online, and my apologies for getting a bit late over time. Our apologies for that. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much for a very insightful session. May I now request Sister Fatima to give her a concluding remark on behalf of TKBB.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for your very kind participation and all contributions for that important standards on syndicated financing. I should also admit that starting from 1990, syndicated financing transactions organized, arranged in FI industry, and today now we are overview and discussing the governance part of this transactions. Now we are getting in a deep dive into the connections, relations, compliance of Sharia and also principles of those transactions. And it is always a great pleasure to have a leadership of Brother Umar for going over those standards, because this is like a lecture, this is like a brainstorming to understanding all the mechanisms, issues, not just the governance part, but also transaction side. That's a great opportunity to discuss all together with these distinguished participants. And I'm very happy that to see this active dialogue and also contribution from the participants. This is like a brainstorming with the related counterparties. And of course, on behalf of Association, Participation Bank Association of Turkey, we are delightful to host this program in Istanbul and in person. And thank you very much for AAOIFI always enlightening us and flourishing the industry with this very informative and insightful discussions, and hope to come together again for the next standards and programs. Thank you very much.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Fatma. And thank you again to TKBB for organizing this and hosting our governance board meeting. And to all the participants, online participants, thank you very much for your participation and your questions and comments. We will address them and take to the relevant working groups and to the board, inshallah. Thank you very much, one and all. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Mr. Said, on behalf of TKBB, we would like to also introduce you a small gift.
Oh.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Yes.
So beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So beautiful. You need to protect it, so.
Oh, it's very,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.